Chapter 21:30. The order of seating. Earlier, while they were still in the valley, the phosphor-armored beast had traded blows with Zhongxian. Even though the latter's physical body was powerful, his zhenqi cultivation and soul cultivation were pathetically weak. Yet, in less than a minute, not only did the latter manage to advance his cultivation considerably, more importantly, he had even managed to harmonize the three perfectly together, achieving a balance that it had never been able to attain despite having cultivated for more than 100 years. The phosphor-armored beast subconsciously turned its sights to Sun Qiong, expecting to see the latter equally shocked. However, what it saw instead was an as-expected expression on the latter's face. It was almost as if the butler did not think that there was anything weird about what had just happened. Did this mean that they expected Zhongxian to be able to achieve breakthroughs within such short periods of time? Just what kind of people had it gotten itself involved with? Just as the phosphor-armored beast felt utterly bewildered, a tint of yellow suddenly appeared in its peripheral vision. A frail-looking little yellow chick had suddenly appeared on Zhongxian's shoulder. "Did you just wake up?" Zhongxian asked with a hint of relief in his voice. You managed to get your hands on quite a few god essence pills, right? I'm starving." The little yellow chick muttered with a dazed look in its eyes, reminiscent of a person who was still groggy from waking up. Seeing this sight, the phosphor-armored beast flew to a rage and bellowed, "Audacious! As a tamed beast, how can you demand things from the young master? This is inappropriate." It had no idea why Zhongxian was rearing a chick, but tamed beasts should have some realization of the positions they were in. How could a tamed beast ask its master for food? If all the tamed beasts in the world acted in such a manner, what would become of the master's dignity? "Who are you?" The little yellow chick turned its gaze over and assessed the transmogrified phosphor-armored beast from head to toe. Then, its mouth curled up as it muttered, "It's a phosphor-armored beast. It shouldn't taste too bad." "Who?" Before the phosphor-armored beast could even react, the little yellow chick had already opened its mouth wide and swallowed it whole. "What are you doing? Hurry up and spit it out. It's a tamed beast that I took in not too long ago." Zhongxian exclaimed in shock, and he hurriedly smacked the little yellow chick's head. He did not expect the latter to start causing trouble shortly after it regained consciousness. It had not even been a minute since the little yellow chick reappeared, but he was already starting to miss his peaceful life in its absence. Just thinking about all the trouble that the little yellow chick would put him in was enough to make him feel exhausted. On the other hand, after hearing Zhongxian's words, the little yellow chick looked at Zhongxian with an indignant pout, as if protesting against his command. However, Zhongxian's gaze remained resolute. So, with a reluctant harumph, it spat out the phosphor-armored beast. Pu. By this point, the phosphor-armored beast had already reverted to its original appearance. Just recalling how it was gobbled up by a mere low-tier god chick was enough to send its fury through the roof. "You brat, how dare you eat me? I'll tear you apart." With a ferocious roar, the phosphor-armored beast charged at the little yellow chick furiously. Zhongxian was going to stop the phosphor-armored beast, but the conceited little yellow chick shook its bottom gleefully and taunted it further. "Quick, come and tear me apart. Rip me into 1,000 pieces. Otherwise, how can a big and mighty beast like you possibly have the courage to continue living in this world after having been gobbled up by a cute little chick like me? Heh. You." The phosphor-armored beast was frenzied. "The heck? What does a little chick like you have to brag about?" Peng. A powerful claw struck down and slammed the little yellow chick into the ground. But when the phosphor-armored beast lifted its claw to take a look, it realized that not only was the little yellow chick not dead, it was even crossing its legs with a relaxed look on its face. "Harder. Have you not eaten yet?" The phosphor-armored beast was frenzied. It slammed its claw into the ground several more times, creating tremors so powerful that some of the walls in the surroundings crumbled. But at the end of everything, the little yellow chick was remained completely unharmed, and it was even looking at him with a bored look on its face. No matter how foolish the phosphor-armored beast was, it was apparent that the little yellow chick was no ordinary low-tier god. It quickly reverted to its human form before looking at Zhongxian anxiously. "Master. All right, stop messing around. Little chick, if you want to die, I'll take you over to City Lord Manor later on to see if there are any ways to do it," Zhongxian said. After being nearly torched to death twice, the little yellow chick had figured out that the way for its cultivation to grow was to have near-death experiences. As such, it was getting more and more fearless of death. On the other hand, seeing that the phosphor-armored beast had finally stopped, the little yellow chick patted off the dust from its body before fluttering its small wings to return to Zhongxian's shoulder. Having been through the spatial turbulence, while its cultivation had not grown too much, its defense had become much stronger than before. Even the celestial god phosphor-armored beast would not be able to kill it too easily. Little Chick looked at the phosphor-armored beast smugly and said, "All right, there's no need for you to get too depressed. I am a legendary beast who used to rule the lands, so it's only normal for you to be unable to kill me. Work hard, and I'll consider taking you in as my little brother." "You want me to be your little brother?" the phosphor-armored beast sneered coldly. "It's true that I'm unable to kill you, but you aren't able to do anything about me either. There's no way I'll be your little brother, so you suggest you stop daydreaming." "Daydreaming?" The little yellow chick burst into laughter. Then, it abruptly widened its beady eyes, and a powerful aura burst forth from its body. "Pada." The phosphor-armored beast immediately kneeled to the ground and bowed deeply. "Big brother. That's more like it." The little yellow chick nodded in satisfaction. On the other hand, the phosphor-armored beast wiped off the cold sweat on its face. It had thought that the other party was just another ordinary divine beast, but as soon as the other party released the prowess of its bloodline, it felt as if the entire world was being torn to shreds. Its bloodline that it had always been so proud of was nowhere close to matching the other party. Just what kind of divine beast could that little yellow chick possibly be? The phosphor-armored beast had gone through so many shocks in one day that it could practically see its own common sense falling apart. To be honest, it felt that it was beneath a celestial god like it to acknowledge a mere god as its master, but with everything that had happened, it looked as if it was the one who had benefited instead. The Celestial Mountain is very far away from Twilight City, and it's shrouded by a seal left behind by a god monarch. It would be impossible to get there through conventional means. The only route is through the teleportation formation within the city. Paying no heed to the phosphor-armored beast and the little yellow chick, Zhongxian listened carefully to Sun Qiong's explanation. Even though he had heard about the Celestial Mountain, he had no idea where it was and where one could acquire the aura of divinity from. Each city is allocated a set number of slots each year, and those who have obtained a slot are teleported right into the midst of the Celestial Mountain. From there, they have to find ways to locate the aura of divinity lingering on the mountain, absorb it, and push for a breakthrough. However, it appears that it isn't as easy as it seems though. There are quite a few people who have been to the Celestial Mountain a number of times, and they still haven't succeeded. Sun Qiong swiftly revealed the news that he had heard. "Let's head there to take a look. I don't think that it'll be too hard for Zhao Ya and the others to succeed," Zhongxian replied calmly. He was not worried about Zhao Ya, his parents, and the others at all. Well, maybe except for Sun Qiong. Even though they were only at the semi-divinity realm, their experiences on the Master-Teacher continent and the Azure far surpassed the indigenous candidates from the firmament. It might have been possible for others to fail, but when it came to them, he could not even imagine it at all. To put it harshly, they would not be qualified to be his students if they really failed. Make sure to follow close behind them. Try to make use of this opportunity to reach godhood as well, or else you'll just lag behind the others, Zhongxian instructed. "I understand." Sun Qiong nodded. By this point, everyone was already packed up and ready to set off. So, they began making their way over to City Lord Manor. The location where the candidates would be teleported to the Celestial Mountain was the square right in front of the City Lord Manor. It took them less than 2 hours to arrive at their destination, and by then, the entire place was already flooding with people. Twilight City was not considered to be a major city within the firmament, but nevertheless, it still had 1,200 slots. Furthermore, most of the candidates were accompanied by their family members and friends. As a result, the vast square ended up being completely packed with people. "Young Master Zhongxian, this way please." Before the group could even enter the square, the old man from before, Ying Fei, quickly walked up to them and ushered them in with a respectful smile. Under Ying Fei's lead, they were brought into a room. Wu Fangqing was already sitting inside when they arrived. Upon seeing them, he quickly rose to his feet and smiled. "Young Master Zhongxian, have a seat." Zhongxian responded with a nod as he took a look around the room. There were roughly 20 other people inside, and a few of them were seated beside Wu Fangqing. Judging from the auras that they were emanating, it was not too hard to deduce that they were the group of the most powerful and influential people in Twilight City. Without any hesitation, he walked over to the seat right beside Wu Fangqing and sat down. But barely after his bottom touched the chair, a middle-aged man sitting along the row looked over questioningly. "City Lord Wu, aren't you going to introduce this friend of yours to us?" The others also quickly turned their gazes as well. They were curious about Zhongxian's identity. Etiquette was exceptionally important within the upper echelons as it was a symbol of power, respect, and authority, especially toward someone higher up in the hierarchy. The seat that Zhongxian had been given was one that was higher in standing than them. If he was a distinguished elder within the city, they might have considered letting it slide. However, he looked too young to have any considerable achievements, and his cultivation did not stand out compared to the rest of them. "Ah, he is Brother Zhongxian. He has brought his students here to challenge the Celestial Mountain," Wu Fangqing said as he gestured to Zhao Ya and the others. "Students." It made the crowd even more curious to hear that someone as young as Zhongxian was actually a teacher. So, they turned to look at Zhao Ya and the others, and deep frowns swiftly formed between their eyebrows. From their point of view, the fact that Zhao Ya and the others had not reached godhood despite being 18 to 19 this year meant that they were sorely lacking in talent. "City Lord Wu, I understand that you have your own reasoning for ordering the seating in such a manner, but with so many people looking, I feel that there's still a need to ensure equity as a sign of respect to all of us here. If Brother Zhongxian or his students displayed exceptional skills, I would have silently acknowledged it, but I honestly don't see how they are worthy of such high honor. I can't help but feel that this is a major faux pas," the middle-aged man said. "Either we have spent a great deal of money in order to get in here, and I don't recall seeing Brother Zhongxian in the auction back then. I don't think it's appropriate for you to arrange for his seating to be in front of us. Not to mention, he has so many people with him," another middle-aged man said. "Seating?" Zhongxian frowned. He had only come over to take a seat at the invitation of the city lord. He did not think that the order of the seating would hold such great significance as well. With a perplexed look, he turned to look at Wu Fangqing, only to hear the latter sending a telepathic message over. "Young Master Zhongxian, my apologies for not informing you in advance. It's like this. The closer one's starting point is to the mountain peak, the higher the chances of obtaining the aura of divinity. In comparison, one's chances are much lower if one starts at the foot of the mountain. As you know, the Celestial Mountain only opens once every 6 months, and all of the semidivinities of the firmament try to get in. As such, it's extremely inefficient for the teleportation formation to simply teleport them to the foot of the mountain. Furthermore, that could lead to conflicts. For this reason, a group of people are teleported straight to the midpoint or even the peak of the mountain. Naturally, these people receive a much greater chance of obtaining the aura of divinity. However, due to the slot restrictions in each city, in order to maintain fairness, the City Lord Manor auctions the slots to the mountain peak, and everyone that is here has acquired their slot through the auction." Hearing these words, Zhongxian nodded in realization. Given that the entire Twilight City only had 1,200 slots, it was understandable that the slots leading straight to the mountain peak or the midpoint were in short supply. It was a given that the others would be displeased if he cut right in and used up 14 of them just like that. "My apologies. If your candidates aren't able to get into the midpoint of the mountain, I'll refund what you paid." Wu Fangqing clasped his fist and apologized. It would be one thing if Zhongxian was an ordinary human, but he was someone who could very well be the offspring of a god monarch. No matter how conceited Wu Fangqing might be, he knew better than to offend a person of such standing. Thus, he could only find a way to satisfy the other party. "This isn't a matter of money but rules," the middle-aged man who had spoken up earlier snapped. "Why don't we do this then? If his students can defeat our candidates, I'll turn a blind eye to this matter. However, if he is unable to do so, I hope that he can apologize to us and scram to the back of the line." Furrowing his brows, Wu Fangqing was just about to reason with the middle-aged man when Zhongxian suddenly spoke up. Sounds fine by me. After that, he turned to Zhao Yue and the others and asked, who wants to give it a try? Sun Qiong stepped forward and placed his arms on his hips. I'll do it. Chapter 21:31 Celestial Mountain Yu? Zhongxian frowned. Sun Qiong had never been too interested in cultivation. Despite that, he had still managed to reach the semi-divinity realm after putting in much effort in the azure. That being said, he still did not feel too assured letting him compete with the geniuses of the firmament. Understanding Zhongxian's considerations, Sun Qiong added, I don't think that they are worthy of fighting Zhao Yue and the others. In the worst-case scenario, you can have Zhao Yue fight them after I lose. All right then, Zhongxian said with a wave of his hand. I will be your opponent. A young man with sharp eyes and an air of valiance stepped forth to accept Sun Qiong's challenge. Tianheng, it'll do for you to just defeat him. Make sure not to cause any injuries, the middle-aged man said. Yes, the young man known as Tianheng replied before walking up to Sun Qiong. With disdain in his eyes, he raised his hand and beckoned, let's not waste any time and get down to it then. A middle-aged man who had not reached godhood yet had already missed the ideal timing for a breakthrough. Even if he obtained the aura of divinity, there was no guarantee that he would be able to succeed. You are going to challenge me alone? Instead of making a move right away, Sun Qiong lazily pointed at the others behind him and said, why don't all of you come at me together instead? I alone will suffice. Tianheng harumphed coldly as he struck a fist out. The fast momentum of his punch caused the air to be severely compressed, producing a sound reminiscent of the lash of a whip. Even though he was only in his teens, he was still rather skilled. He had a sharp grasp over his strength and the timing of battle. In response, Sun Qiong shook his head as he pulled out his left arm from his back. The next moment, his left arm suddenly blurred into a flurry of punches, producing innumerable after-images in its wake. Peng! Before Tianheng could even react, he was already struck in his chest, forcing him to retreat 3 steps before he stumbled and landed on his bottom. Seeing this, Zhongxian heaved a sigh of relief. Even though Sun Qiong was not diligent in his cultivation, he was, at the very least, still a practitioner of the simplified Heaven's Path divine art and Heaven's Path battle techniques. Furthermore, he had been through quite a few battles back in his time on the Master-Teacher continent and the Azure. Even though the young man was considerably talented, he was still far from matching Sun Qiong. Like I said, you aren't a match for me. It would be so much easier if all of you were to come at me together. After defeating Tianheng with a single strike, Sun Qiong looked at the remaining young men with the forlorn expression of an undefeatable expert. Yuan Dao stepped out and said, Uncle Sun, you have already fought a battle. Shouldn't I take the next battle instead? Hey, that's enough of you all. Take a look at where you are, all right? Let me do it instead. Zheng Yang whipped out his spear and stood valiantly. Of course, all of you can come at me together as well. Otherwise, if the elders wish to make a move too, you can lower your cultivation and come at me. Don't worry, I won't get any help from the others. Aren't you getting ahead of yourself? I haven't made a move for a very long time either. Wei Ruyan said with a chilling smile on her lips. Zhongxian clasped his face. Zhongjia looked over with a dumbfounded expression on its face. Did its master not tell it that he liked to maintain a low profile? If that was the case, why were his students such troublemakers? No matter how it looked at it, none of them came close to fitting the idea of low profile. How conceited. Fine, I'll be your opponent then. I want to fight that green-robed girl. Heh, I'll teach that fatty a lesson. His words are simply too maddening. It's as if he thinks that he's the best in the world. The actions of Zheng Yang and the others had really invoked the rage of the youths in the room. With a ferocious roar, all of them charged at them. A few breaths later though, they were all left lying on the floor. Even though they were considered above average among the cultivators in Twilight City, they were nothing in comparison to Zhao Yue and the others. Even Sun Qiong was more than enough to deal with them. This Seeing how their candidates were defeated before they could even put up a decent fight against their happy smiley middle-aged men who had cast their doubts on Zhongxian earlier felt extremely lightheaded. They nearly spurted blood from their mouths. They had thought that Zhongxian had relied on his connections in order to obtain his seat, but who could have known that he actually had the strength to back it up? Since his students were that formidable, why did he still waste his money buying his slots? He should have just had them participate in the fight for it in the first place. They would have surely dominated the top rankings without fail. At the same time, even though Wu Fangqing had remained silent as all of this transpired, it had affirmed the thoughts in his mind. No matter how he looked at it, it was apparent that these youths before him were monstrously talented. It would take great luck to accept one of such cultivator as one's student, but for so many of them to come under the same person. There was bound to be something more to it than just luck. Even if Zhongxian did not possess the bloodline of a god monarch, he likely did not pale too much in comparison to that. Is this enough to prove that young master Zhongxian and his students are qualified to be in here? Wu Fangqing asked with a smile. Of course, of course. The crowd quickly replied. It was true that teleporting to the mountain peak or the midpoint gave one a much greater chance of obtaining the aura of divinity, but ultimately, whether one really obtained it or not boiled down to one's strength. No one would be able to snatch the aura of divinity from the one who boasted the greatest strength. If all 14 of them were that powerful, there was no way their candidates would be able to snatch the aura of divinity from them. Since this was the case, it would be better to sell them this favor instead. Otherwise, if those 14 people targeted their candidates on the Celestial Mountain, there would be nothing they could do about it. Since everyone is fine with it, let's begin the teleportation. It's already about time. Wu Fangqing stood up and took out his City Lord token. With a light tap on it, a pure burst of white light swiftly enveloped the entire square. Then, a massive gate appeared at the very center of the square, drawing crowds to congregate around it. Young Master Zhongxian, let them enter first, Wu Fangqing said with a smile. Zhongxian took a closer look at the gate and noted that it was only a teleportation formation, so there was no danger. Heaving a sigh of relief, he beckoned for Zhao Ya and the others to gather around him. Take 5 pills each. I have infused my power inside it, and it'll help you to overcome your bottlenecks and save you in times of crisis. With a flick of his hand, he passed a bottle of God Essence pills to each of them. The God Essence pills were not of much use of him anymore, so he might as well give them to the others. Once they acquired the aura of divinity and successfully made a breakthrough, they would be able to immediately push for higher realms with this. Thank you, young master. Thank you, Xianer. Thank you, teacher. Zhongxian did not have anything else for them, so he urged them to quickly enter the teleportation formation. The group swiftly passed through the gate and vanished from sight. As he was already a god, he could not pass through the teleportation formation. So, he could only wait for them outside. In less than an hour, all 1,200 semidivinity realm cultivators in the square had passed through the gate to enter the Celestial Mountain. The gate wavered a little before slowly vanishing from sight. The teleportation formation will reappear a day from now. If you aren't in too much of a hurry, City Lord Manor has prepared a banquet so that you can wait there for your kin to return, Wu Fangqing said with a smile. Sounds great. The crowd nodded in agreement. To a cultivator, a day was not too long at all. Zhongxian could not be bothered to make the trip back to his residence, so he followed the group into City Lord Manor. There was slight disorientation from passing through the gate, causing Zhao Ya to stumble out. By the time she regained her balance, she realized that she was already standing amid clouds. Taking a closer look, she realized that she was on top of a mountain. Unlike the Grand Spirit Mountain, the surroundings were rich in spiritual energy, creating an environment for plants to thrive. Vitality, instead of barrenness, filled the area. I should look for the aura of divinity. Knowing her priority for going to the Celestial Mountain, Zhao Ya swiftly flitted toward the peak. She swiftly realized that the concentration of spiritual energy increased the higher she ascended, making it more likely for her to find the aura of divinity. After traveling several hundred meters, she suddenly heard the moaning of the wind echoing not too far away. She quickly hid behind a tree before looking in the direction where the sound had come from. It was from an arrow. Following that, a frightened white animal reminiscent of a rabbit quickly dashed away, as if fleeing from a hunter. Is that the aura of divinity? Zhao Huai's eyes lit up. Sun Qiong had gathered some information regarding the celestial mountain and relayed it to them the day before. According to him, the aura of divinity could morph itself into life forms on the celestial mountain, making it highly difficult to capture. Stop it. Two silhouettes dashed out from the woods to chase the rabbit. They were the ones who had shot the arrow before. Su 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 su. Another volley of arrows shot forth and struck the fleeing rabbit. The rabbit struggled on the ground for a moment before dissipating into a bundle of golden fluid. I'll go first. One of the silhouettes who shot the arrows rushed forward to grab the golden fluid and swallowed it. The next moment, Zhao Huai sensed the other party's cultivation swiftly surging. From the looks of it, it seemed like it would not take too long for him to overcome his current bottleneck and become a real god. I should hurry up. Seeing that it was not too difficult for hunt down the aura of divinity, Zhao Huai unhesitatingly continued to charge up the mountain. Along the way, she encountered quite a few rabbit-shaped auras of divinity, but as there were already cultivators hunting them down, she could not be bothered to snatch from them. It did not take her too long to reach the peak. The atmospheric pressure was clearly much stronger at the top of the celestial mountain compared to elsewhere. Zhao Huai took a look around, but there did not seem to be anyone in the area. This made her frown a little. Nevertheless, she quickly analyzed the tracks on the ground to search for traces of the aura of divinity. She had assessed the footprints left behind by the rabbits on her way there, so she had a good idea of how she could locate them. This trail seems a bit off. It's a bit too big to be a rabbit, but it doesn't matter. Having located her target, she drove her pure yin body to its limits and followed the trail. Who? At the end of the trail, a white tiger carrying an imposing aura suddenly leaped out. This. Zhao Huai was shocked. While the auras of divinity that others found were all rabbits, why did she end up stumbling onto this large, ferocious fellow instead? However, she did not think that it would make much of a difference to her. So, with a flick of her wrist, she charged forth and began her assault on the white tiger. As the first senior of all of Zhongxian's direct disciples, Zhao Huai had always been very strict on herself. Her diligence paired with the prowess of her unique constitution made her undefeatable among her peers such that even Zheng Yang was not a match for her. With her exerting her full force, the area swiftly turned frosty cold. This fellow is powerful. After fighting for a while, cold sweat began dripping from Zhao Huai's forehead. If it had been the rabbits before, as long as she could catch up with them, she would have been able to subdue them with a single finger of hers. Otherwise, there was no way they would have been subdued by arrows so easily. On the other hand, the white tiger that she was facing was extremely powerful, stronger than her even. In terms of strength, it was at least comparable to a low-tier god. In other words, she was facing a true god despite only possessing the strength of a semi-divinity. Under normal circumstances, it would be extremely difficult for her to achieve victory. She knew this as well, but it was already too late to escape. She could only attempt to push her way through. Thus, gritting her teeth, she swallowed the pill given to her by her teacher. The pill swiftly melted in her mouth, filling her body with the heaven's path shanqi. In an instant, the fatigue and injuries she had accumulated throughout the battle vanished without a trace. Chapter 2132 The Skies in an Uproar 1:2132 The Skies in an Uproar 1. Hoo. With Zhao Huai's rapid recovery, she immediately began launching a barrage of forceful and deadly strikes against the white tiger. In the blink of an eye, the tables were turned. The sheer aggressiveness that Zhao Huai was fighting with made it impossible for the white tiger to stand its ground, causing it to slowly accumulate injuries. However, it was no easy feat for Zhao Huai to continue attacking with such fervor. It was inevitable that her stamina would be swiftly whittled down if she maintained such high-intensity offense. But when it looked as if she was about to run out of energy, she would simply pop another pill into her mouth and continue with her attacks. Shortly after Zhao Huai consumed her third pill, the massive white tiger finally lost its strength and slumped to the ground. Seeing that she had finally defeated her opponent, Zhao Huai wiped the sweat off her forehead and heaved a sigh of relief. If not for her teacher's pills and her pure yin body, there was no way she would have been able to hold on for so long. That was a battle she had to put her life on the line in order to win. Isn't it supposed to be rather easy to obtain the aura of divinity? What's going on? Perplexed, Zhao Wei turned to the white tiger on the ground, which happened to dissipate right at that instant to form a bundle of golden fluid. It was like what she had witnessed with the rabbits previously, but what was different about it was the sharpness the golden fluid formed by the white tiger. To make a comparison, if the golden fluid formed by the rabbit was a stream, what she was looking at before her was a boundless ocean. And this left her feeling slightly shocked. Could it be that the aura of divinity can be classified into different tiers as well? She had never heard of something like this before, but everything before her was pointing in that direction. That's not important at the moment. I should first get down to business. Knowing that there was no way for her to know for sure, she chose to quickly sit down on the ground and started to meditate. Who? The golden fluid immediately surged into her body. Catcher, catcher. As soon as the energy seeped into her body, her bottleneck was swiftly shattered, and her cultivation grew at a visible rate. What formidable aura of divinity, Zhao Wei remarked with narrowed eyes. The aura of divinity carried a sharp metal aura that made her feel as if her meridians were going to be ripped apart. At the same time, it felt like the roar of sword qi, clearing away all the obstructions hindering her within her body. In less than 10 minutes, she surpassed her own limits and became a real god. Wang. The moment she became a god, a brilliant light gathered around her and embraced her, making her seem as though an angel. But Zhao Wei herself remained oblivious to it. She was too absorbed in her cultivation to notice any of this. As Zhao Wei made her breakthrough, Lu Chong also arrived at the other end of the mountain peak. Shortly after his arrival, he encountered a dark silhouette. It was neither a rabbit nor a tiger. Rather, it had an appearance that was similar a human, but it was made entirely out of mist. Using the pills given to him by his teacher, even though the fight was not easy for him, he still managed to defeat the dark human-like silhouette eventually. The defeated silhouette dissipated to form a bundle of golden fluid, becoming a powerful source of energy that fueled the growth of Lu Chong's soul. The others were all facing the same situation. Wang Ying encountered a snowy ancient tree, Zheng Yang encountered a behemoth covered in flames, Wei Ruyan encountered a river that could consume life. North of the firmament, there existed a vast, boundless ocean. At the very middle of this ocean was a humongous palace floating right above its surface. Like the searing sun in the sky, it radiated a brilliance that cast it in an angelic glow. The clear water beneath the palace reflected its grandeur perfectly, crafting out a dreamlike landscape. Within the palace, there was a bearded elder sitting on a grand and majestic throne. He was staring intently at the empty space in front of him, seemingly deep in thought. Monarch. A middle-aged man entered the splendid hall and clasped his fist. The elder glanced downward before nodding slightly to acknowledge his presence. Then, he asked, "When will the duel between that person from the Sky of Freedom and the Heaven Subjugation Monarch be held?" "It'll be held on the 15th of the next month," the middle-aged man replied with a deep voice. 15th. The night of the full moon, the elder muttered beneath his breath. "That person from the Sky of Freedom accepted the duel faster than I thought. Monarch, pardon my insolence, but there's a question that has been bothering me for some time," the middle-aged man said. "You have been with me for many years now, so there's no need for you to behave so warily around me." "Feel free to pose your doubt," the elder replied. "Thank you for your kind words, Monarch." The middle-aged man nodded. "I was just wondering if the Heaven Subjugation Monarch is really that formidable, such that even the other 8 god monarchs aren't a match for him." The elder paused for a brief moment upon hearing those words as he raised his head in reminiscence. Then, with a deep sigh, he remarked, "Unfathomably so. What about that person from the Sky of Freedom? They have never appeared in public before, so no one knows just how powerful they are. Compared to the Heaven Subjugation Monarch, who is more powerful?" the middle-aged man asked. "That person from the Sky of Freedom is unfathomably powerful as well. I have never met them in person before, but the aura they emanate was as towering as the lofty heavens, as if the entire universe revolved around them." It was not a force that any being in the world could contend with. But as for who is more powerful, I am unable to say for sure. The elder shook his head. That means that the battle between the two of them will be the greatest battle ever since the firmament came into existence. The middle-aged man widened his eyes in realization. Then, a bitter smile crept onto his lips as he sighed deeply. It would really have been a great honor to witness their battle, but it's unfortunate that a person of my caliber would have disintegrated to ashes before I could even approach them. Even a conferred god king would be easily killed if he was caught between the battle between god monarchs. It might appear to be just a realm of difference, but the gap between those two realms was absolute. Nothing could bridge the difference. That was also why the position of the god monarchs had been unshakable ever since the founding of the firmament. This might also be why there had only been 9 god monarchs in the firmament since time immemorial till recent decades. You wish to witness the battle? This is something that concerns the reputation of the 9 skies, so you should drop that idea of yours. The elder shook his head. But all of a sudden, the elder's movements halted for a brief moment, and his pupils dilated ever so slightly, reflecting the huge fluctuations in his emotions. The keen-eyed middle-aged man noticed the difference and asked worriedly, "Monarch, did something happen?" "That person from the sky of freedom has just passed down a message. They are inviting the 8 of us to witness the battle," the elder replied with a slow and contemplative tone, as if he was trying to discern the other party's intentions. He did not think that the person from the sky of freedom would make such a call. Even for the other god monarchs, they had chosen to fight the heaven subjugation monarch behind closed doors. As a result, not even the conferred god kings beneath them were aware of the results, even though they could probably fathom a guess. Does this mean that the person from the sky of freedom is confident in defeating the heaven subjugation monarch? The middle-aged man asked. Perhaps, the elder remarked with a doubtful edge to his tone. The difference in their strength is unlikely to be too great, given that they have both reached the pinnacle of the world. It's hard to tell who will win at this point, so we can only watch what happens. Speaking of which, the 4th flood of spiritual energy is coming soon, right? Are there any outstanding geniuses in our Akron Ocean at the moment? Not yet, the middle-aged man replied. Even though most cultivators treasure the opportunity they have to cultivate more than ever after the receding of spiritual energy, it still isn't that easy to find outstanding geniuses among them. Furthermore, in order for them to stand out in the flood of spiritual energy, they must possess top-notch capabilities. Such people will eventually become god kings at the very minimum. Sigh, there are simply too few of such people around. I heard that old geezer Chenkuan of the Sky of Drifting Spectres recently secured himself a decently talented soul, the elder remarked questioningly. There's indeed such a thing. According to the rumors, he found him from the lower worlds and absorbed his soul right into the netherworld pool. Based on our sources, it seems like God Monarch Chenkuan is currently helping him forge a new body. If that soul is able to move old geezer Chenkuan into action, his capabilities must be truly extraordinary. What a pity that he didn't appear in our Sky of Akron, otherwise, I would have made sure to groom him regardless of how much it costs and turn him into a top-notch expert in the shortest time possible. Indeed. The middle-aged man shared the elder's lamentation. Rest assured, Monarch. I have left a mechanism in the Celestial Mountains so as to ensure that we'll be able to get to any emerging top-notch geniuses as soon as they appear. The elder nodded silently before slowly closing his eyes, a gesture that symbolized that the middle-aged man was dismissed. But at that very moment, the sound of a clock suddenly echoed outside the room. The elder immediately opened his eyes and rose to his feet. The bell of conferred kings? The middle-aged man also trembled in agitation upon hearing the chimes. The sounding of the bell of conferred kings means that a cultivator who possesses the potential to become a conferred god king has appeared. The middle-aged man exclaimed. There were only so many conferred god kings in the world, making them existences that were almost as rare as god monarchs. Their power was second only to the god monarchs, so it went without saying that they were highly sought after by all powers. Hurry up and recruit that genius to our side, the elder instructed anxiously. But before finishing his words, he changed his mind and said, Forget it, you're too slow. I'll do it myself. Right after saying those words, the elder disappeared on the spot. Those who had become god monarchs were capable of instantaneous teleportation. As powerful as the spatial laws of the firmament were, they were insufficient to curb them anymore. It seems like our sky of Akron is set for the flood of spiritual energy then. Seeing that the god monarch had personally made a move to recruit the genius, the middle-aged man heaved a sigh of relief. In the sky of adamant gold, god monarch Fumeng was in the midst of a court assembly when he heard the bell of conferred kings chiming loudly. A genius suited for our sky of adamant gold has appeared. I'll receive him personally. Who? God monarch Fumeng disappeared on the spot. In the sky of cloud dragon. Even in the long history of firmament, the appearance of geniuses of such a caliber has been extremely rare. The last time it happened was the heaven subjugation monarch and his direct disciples. We mustn't miss this opportunity. The rest of you should make preparations here while I head over to take a look personally. With a slight jolt, the cloud dragon monarch morphed back into his true body, a 5-clawed golden dragon, before vanishing on the spot. Ha ha ha. Who would have thought that such a formidable genius would appear for our sky of blazing sun? I still remember how that darned Chenkuan bragged about the soul he found before me just a while ago. This time, I'll make sure to groom the prodigy personally. No matter how much I have to accelerate time by, I'll make sure that he becomes a conferred god king before the flood of spiritual energy. With a brilliant chuckle, god monarch Shuoyang flung his robe to the side, revealing his bare thighs. Seeing this sight, an aged attendant beside him immediately rushed forward and awkwardly advised, "Monarch, if you are heading out, may I humbly request for you to put your undergarments on? It'll diminish your honor if someone sees it. As someone who governs the blazing sun, the heavenly flames that I harness within my body will swiftly reduce any clothes I wear to ash. It's simply too much trouble to put them on again and again, I might as well just bear it all." God monarch Shuoyang harumphed impatiently. "I understand that it's more cooling for you to bear it all, but aren't you heading out to receive someone? You might leave a bad impression if you leave like that," the aged attendant advised. As a subordinate serving god monarch Shuoyang, he was too familiar with the habits of the latter for his own comfort. No one could have imagined that one of the 9 god monarchs would actually detest putting on underwear. It was fortunate that he rarely left his palace, or else the honor and dignity of the sky of blazing sun would really be tossed into the gutters. "Enough, you are too naggy. I'll be right back with that fellow." Who? God monarch Shuoyang swiftly created undergarments around his bare bottom with his divine energy before vanishing. Chapter 2133 The Firmament in an Uproar 2:2133 The Firmament in an Uproar, 2. Other than the elusive sky of freedom, the next most mysterious existence in the firmament was probably the sword hut. The palaces of the god monarchs were known for their grandeur and splendor, but the god monarch of the sky of heavenly sword lived in an ordinary-looking straw hut. "Monarch." A middle-aged man walked into the sword hut to report something, but he was interrupted before he could finish his words. "I have heard. A genius who specializes in swordsmanship has appeared on the celestial mountain." "Why yes, that's the case." The middle-aged man nodded in response. "I have seen his swordplay, and it's indeed remarkable. He has achieved a level of conceptualization that's almost on par with ours. But he's not someone we are looking for," a calm voice sounded from within the straw hut. "But the bell of conferred kings has sounded." The middle-aged man was taken aback. He exclaimed in a fluster, "If we don't hurry, the other powers might just beat us to it. That would mean that our sword hut will receive fewer slots in the next flood of spiritual energy, and we will have our territories taken away from us as well. Are those important to us? Our sword hut aims to nurture sword practitioners to forge a sword intent and conceptualization that belongs to them and them alone. It's not about charging ahead and learning blindly," the voice in the straw hut said. "No matter how well one leans, the highest level one can reach will just be a mere reflection of what others have already achieved. There's no need to worry about the flood of spiritual energy. The person I am waiting for has already appeared, and I'll be paying a visit to him personally very soon." "I understand." Seeing that the god monarch had his own plans, the middle-aged man lowered his posture and backed out of the room respectfully. Sigh. Shortly after the middle-aged man left, a deep sigh echoed within the straw hut. A quiet, lamenting mutter sounded. I really don't know whether it was the right decision for you to do that. On a towering mountain concealed amidst clouds, a tall elder gazed upon his disciples standing right in front of him. Profound words reminiscent of symphonic music flowed out of his words, delighting his disciples. Absorbing the knowledge that was being imparted to them, the disciples found their cultivation growly swiftly. Let's stop here today. But all of a sudden, the elder stopped his lecture and turned his sights toward a certain direction. Noticing that something was amiss, a middle-aged man amidst the crowd stood up and clasped his fists before asking, "Teacher, did something happen?" His teacher believed deeply that the impartation of knowledge was crucial to the betterment of the world, and he was devoted to that cause as well. As such, he would always ensure that the lesson was complete before concluding it. Yet, he chose to halt halfway through this time around. It was clear that something major had happened. That person of the sky of freedom has decided on the date. The battle will be held on the 15th of the next month, the elder said with a faint smile on his lips. It was almost as if he was talking about someone else instead of himself. He showed no hints of stress as a result of that battle. The sky of freedom is the center of the 9 skies, and its monarch is the supreme ruler of the myriad worlds. Teacher, I fear that your battle with her will. The middle-aged man couldn't help but feel deeply apprehensive about the battle that would be held not too long away from now. He trusted in his teacher's capabilities, but no matter what, the enemy was the strongest individual of the firmament. Even the other god monarchs bowed in the presence of that person. It would surely be a tough battle even for his teacher. More importantly, the battle between them would be a life-and-death duel, unlike the casual spars his teacher had with the other god monarchs. It's fine, the elder replied as he stroked his beard. Since it's a battle, there's bound to be a victor and a loser. No one can win all his life. It'll be fine as long as I give it my all. But, in order to deal with you, that person descended to the lower worlds to find the great codex of spring and autumn so that she could gain a deeper understanding of your powers. I'm afraid that the real reason why she's accepting your challenge is because she already knows your abilities. In a battle between 2 equals, understanding the abilities of one's opponent can make a world of a difference, the middle-aged man remarked anxiously. His teacher had challenged that person of the sky of freedom for some time now, but there had been no response all this while. Recently, however, they heard that that person descended to the lower worlds some time ago, and as soon as she returned, she immediately set the date of the duel. This could be taken as a sign that she was fully prepared and was confident of victory. In a battle between 2 equally powerful individuals, the factor that determined the winner was often the asymmetry of knowledge. If that person really knew about his teacher's abilities, that would mean that his teacher was in an extremely dangerous position. So what if she knows about my abilities? It won't be easy for her to defeat me. The elder looked at the middle-aged man and smiled calmly. Despite his leisurely tone, the elder's voice carried deep confidence. After defeating so many god monarchs, his strength had already reached the peak of the firmament as well. I have no doubt in teacher's strength, but I'm just a little bit confused. Why do you have to fight with the monarch of the sky of freedom, and why does it have to be a life-and-death duel? The middle-aged man simply couldn't make sense out of this. His teacher had already received the acknowledgement from 8 of the current god monarchs, and he had already gained widespread recognition as the 10th god monarch of the firmament. So, was there really a need for him to fight against the monarch of the sky of freedom? Was it something that was worth having him put his life down for? This is an inevitable fate that neither of us will be able to avoid. You won't be able to understand that. The elder sighed with a shake of his head. Then, he looked at the middle-aged man quietly for a moment before saying, "If I were to lose my life in the duel, I want you to wait quietly. Don't make any moves. Wait for my successor to appear and heed his words." Successor? Teacher's successor? The middle-aged man asked in bewilderment. He had been following his teacher since a very long time ago, and a step at a time, they had climbed to the top of many worlds. But he had never heard of his teacher having a successor before. Indeed. He's from the master-teacher continent as well, and he possesses capabilities on par with mine, the elder said with a faint smile. May I know what is the name of teacher's successor then? How can we identify him? The middle-aged man asked anxiously. You will know him once you see him, the elder replied with a deep look in his eyes. As for his name, I guess I can tell it to you. His name is Zhongxian. Meanwhile, in a certain room in the sky of freedom, thick puffs of steam filled the room, hindering one from seeing what was within. Voila! The sound of water splashing resounded in the room, and a beautiful and flawless figure rose from a pool in the middle of the room. Silky black hair paired with skin that was so delicate that it seemed as if it would crumble at a touch. That figure was so beautiful that it was hard to believe that someone like this could exist in the world. With a graceful wave of her hand, she covered her body in a thin layer of silk. Young mistress. A green-robed lady quickly walked up to the beautiful lady to pass a comb over to her. The beautiful lady unfurled her hair and began to comb it slowly. Her movement was so graceful and natural that it was pleasing just to look at it. Have you passed down the news? The beautiful lady asked. I have, the green-robed lady nodded. The response? None at the moment, the green-robed lady shook her head. She pondered for a moment before adding on, however, young mistress, we have managed to uncover what you asked for. Oh! The eyes of the beautiful lady twinkled. She stopped combing her hair and turned her gaze over, gesturing for the green-robed lady to continue on. A young man named Zhongxian has appeared in Twilight City. He and his disciples are rather talented, such that while they were scouring the celestial mountain for the aura of divinity, they managed to trigger quite a few bells of conferred kings, the green-robed lady replied. It's indeed him. The beautiful lady muttered as a sweet smile subconsciously blossomed on her lips. Young mistress, are you intending to meet him? The green-robed lady asked. The sweet smile faded to a frown. The beautiful lady hesitated with a conflicted look on her face before shaking her head. There's no need for that. I need to prepare for battle over the next few days, so I won't be meeting anyone, especially him. I'm afraid that I might lose my determination. Young mistress, pardon me for saying this, but if you are already wavering, why don't you just back out of the fight? The Heaven Subjugation Monarch is powerful enough to defeat the other 8 of the God Monarchs. I'm worried that. The green-robed lady said. The young mistress possessed strength that was at the peak of the world, but the enemy she was going to face was not weak either. In just 40 short years, that man had managed to make himself a place amidst the top echelons of the firmament, becoming an existence that no one didn't know of. He challenged the other 8 God Monarchs, and even though no one knew the details of the battles, from the fact how they eventually recognized him as the 10th God Monarch, it was apparent that he was the victor in those battles. His achievements had opened up a new chapter in the history of the firmament. It might appear to be a cowardly decision, but escaping from the fight was always an option. Besides, even if they had to fight with one another, it shouldn't be a big deal who won or lost the battle. Was there a need to make it a life-and-death duel? It is an inevitability. I have to kill him with my own hands. There are no other paths I can take. This is the mission the world has given to me, and I can't shirk away from this responsibility, the beautiful lady replied solemnly. But you need not say more. This matter has already been decided, and nothing will change it, the beautiful lady said with a wave of her hand. All right, I'll be going into seclusion to cultivate. Leaving behind those words, the beautiful lady turned around and walked away. Young mistress. The green-robed lady didn't think that her master would be so obstinate. Even though she was unhappy with how things were going down, she heaved a deep sigh and decided to keep her opinions to herself. Chapter 2134 The Anxious Zhongxian. I heard that the aura of divinity on the celestial mountain can be divided into various tiers. After filling their stomachs with sumptuous food and fine wine, the figures who represented the top echelons of Twilight City gathered together with a cup of wine in hand to have a leisurely talk. There seems to be such a thing now that you talk about it. The higher tier aura of divinity is harder to tame, but at the same time, it is much purer and harnesses greater power. It can better temper one's divine energy, thus forging a strong foundation for future breakthroughs. I heard that the higher tier auras of divinity are refined by the 9 God Monarchs personally, so it harnesses their power. As such, those whose constitutions or cultivation techniques are at odds with the powers of the God Monarchs won't be able to assimilate it. As such, Only a small handful of the top-notch geniuses will be able to do so. It has been 40 years since the receding of spiritual energy occurred, and the celestial mountain has opened for 79 times to date. But to date, only 3 people have been able to induce the sounding of the bells of conferred kings. Now that I think about it, they appear to be all disciples of the heaven subjugation monarch too. I wonder if the bells of conferred kings would sound this time around. That's unlikely to be the case. So far, those who have been able to become conferred god kings so far are those who possess superior bloodlines. In other words, a cultivator's fate is already decided at his birth. This is not something that diligence can make up for. Bloodline determines everything. Without a sufficiently powerful bloodline, no matter how talented one is, one's accomplishment will still be capped. The discussions swiftly reduced to a couple of sighs of lamentation. Hearing their words, Zhongxian turned to Wu Fangqing and asked doubtfully, "Is bloodline really that important to a cultivator?" "Of course," Wu Fangqing replied frankly. "Through his talent, a series of fortuitous encounters, and diligence, there's still a chance for ordinary cultivators to become a celestial god. However, all those prove to be insufficient for one to become a god king. The hurdle is simply too high. In terms of probability, the chances of a person with a strong bloodline becoming a god king is 100 times higher than that of other cultivators. As far as I know, of the 100 or so god kings of the 9 skies, the only ones who managed to reach the level of god king without relying on their bloodline are the heaven subjugation monarch and 3 of his disciples." "The disciples of the heaven subjugation monarch?" "That's right. I heard that his disciples are from the lower world, but other than that, there's not much information about them. There are simply too many secrets surrounding the heaven subjugation monarch that are yet to be unraveled," Wu Fangqing remarked. If anyone else were to speak about a god monarch in such a manner, he would have already been berated for his rudeness. If Zhongxian was really the descendant of a god monarch, there was a good chance that he would have felt strongly about this matter. In a sense, Wu Fangqing intentionally phrased things in that manner in order to test the latter's reaction. But unexpectedly, the latter simply nodded quietly with no particular expression on his face. It was really hard to read the thoughts that were in his mind. There was a brief moment of silence before Zhongxian asked once more, "If I may ask, what difference does the tier of the aura of divinity make?" All along, he thought that the aura of divinity he received on the azure would be the same as what that was on the firmament. He didn't think that it could be differentiated into multiple tiers. Frankly speaking, I don't really know either. I would say that it's more of hearsay in the firmament. There have always been rumors that the aura of divinity is differentiated into multiple tiers, and only those who boast the greatest of talents would be able to obtain the highest tier aura of divinity, paving their way to greatness. Wu Fangqing replied contemplatively before chuckling softly. But in the end, these are just nothing more than rumors. There's no need to take them for real. While Wu Fangqing was speaking, the door on the square right in front of the City Lord Manor suddenly jolted, and a silhouette emerged from it. "Someone has already returned from the Celestial Mountain? Doesn't the trial typically take a day at the very minimum?" Zhongxian asked in confusion. This abrupt situation induced Zhongxian to rise to their feet and walk to the courtyard to take a closer look. On the other hand, the rest of the crowd in the hall didn't seem to be surprised by such a development. The Celestial Mountain is indeed open for a day, and within this period of time, those who have yet to reach godhood can continue scouring the grounds to look for the aura of divinity. However, those who have succeeded will be instantly teleported back to where they came from, Wu Fangqing explained. Zhongxian widened in realization. "Ha ha ha, it's my son. It has only been 2 hours, but he has already managed to reach godhood." A middle-aged man amidst the crowd burst into hearty laughter as he walked out of the courtyard as well. Even if the cultivator started out at the mountain peak, it was still an impressive feat to be able to acquire the aura of divinity within 2 hours and successfully make a breakthrough. This, in itself, was proof of the cultivator's talent. This result would be recorded down, and it would influence one's overall standing on the ranking boards. Congratulations! With such a talented son, I reckon that the Hu clan is bound to rise to great heights in the future. Old brother Hu Shu, after much contemplation, I think that it would still be best to partner with you for the business we have discussed previously. Even though we have never worked together before, I have heard much about how you do things, and I must say that I feel at ease leaving things to you. Brother who, your son and daughter are already of marriageable age. Why don't you settle this matter quickly? The crowd quickly gathered around the middle-aged man, Hu Shu, with heated gazes. The very feat of acquiring the aura of divinity and successfully making a breakthrough within 2 hours was enough to place Hu Shu's son at the peak of Twilight City in terms of talent. Without a doubt, the young man would achieve great things in the future. This was the best chance for them to get close to Hu Shu, or else the latter could become a figure way beyond their reach soon. Hu Shu tilted his chin up proudly as he replied to the questions of the crowd patiently with a gleeful smile on his face. It was the typical look of a parent after hearing that his son had gotten into a prestigious university. After settling the passionate crowd around him, Hu Shu turned his gaze to Zhongxian and sneered disdainfully. It was true that his son had lost Zhongxian's students earlier, but it seemed like the tables had turned around. His son had already achieved a breakthrough, but what about the other party's students? They were still struggling on the Celestial Mountain. In the end, despite the superior strength they possessed, their potential was severely lacking. Just the fact that they were still at semi-divinity realm despite their age spoke loudly about this. They might be powerful amongst their peers at the moment, but their achievements were already capped. Young Master Zhongxian, it seems like my son was lucky to succeed ahead of your disciples. I look forward to finding out how long it will take for your disciples to reach godhood too, Hu Shu walked up and said in a mocking tone. It was only human nature for a parent to brag about his child's accomplishments. How boring it would be if everyone simply lived humbly in the world. Given that he had just been humiliated further, he wanted to repay the favor back to Zhongxian. On the other hand, Zhongxian frowned slightly upon hearing Hu Shu's words. It was not that he felt insulted by Hu Shu's provocations, but he couldn't help but think that something was amiss about this matter. Given the cultivation technique he had imparted to his disciples, they should be able to achieve a breakthrough within less than an hour after obtaining the aura of divinity. But even after the passing of so much time, not a single one of his disciples had returned yet. Could it be that they had encountered some sort of danger? But that shouldn't be. He was still rather confident in the abilities of Zhao Ya and the others. Even Sun Qiong was able to deal with dozens of the semi-divinity realm cultivators here earlier, so there was even less of a chance that Zhao Ya and the others would face any danger on the Celestial Mountain. I reckon that they have been delayed by some matters, Zhongxian replied. This was the only explanation he could think of at the moment. Due to the severance in space between the Celestial Mountain and the rest of the world, he was unable to sense whether the Heaven's Path Shanqi he had infused into the God Essence pills he had given them had been used or not. Delayed. Ha ha ha. I pray that young Master Zhongxian's disciples will be able to overcome whatever problems they are facing at the moment then. The middle-aged man replied smugly as he raised his head even higher than before. So what if your disciples are more powerful than the average semi-divinity? As long as they weren't able to reach godhood, they would be no different from trash. Who? While the middle-aged man was still skipping around the courtyard gleefully, the door in the middle of the square jolted once more. This time around, it was a group of 12 people. Zhongxian quickly scanned their faces, but none of them were the ones he was looking out for. Young Master Zhongxian, it appears that my child has returned as well. Those disciples of yours were the first to enter, and they were granted a position closest to the mountain peak, which boasts of the greatest aura of divinity. It doesn't make sense for them not to be out yet. Are they having trouble making a breakthrough to godhood? Oh my, that would mean that they are severely lacking in potential. The others who had been humiliated by Zhao Ya and the others earlier also walked out with gleeful smiles on their faces. They weren't able to do a thing earlier because City Lord Wu was clearly shielding this young man, and their children ended up being no match for the young man's disciples at all. As such, they were forced to swallow their grievances. However, now that the tables were turned, how could they possibly miss out on this ideal opportunity to make a jab at that young man? I admit that your students are incredibly powerful as semi-divinities, but so what? Aren't they still lacking in talent in the end? Compared to my talented son, they are nothing at all. It will really be the joke of the century if they couldn't reach godhood despite the favorable conditions they were given. Young Master Zhongxian, please pay no attention to them. Luck plays a huge part in determining whether one is able to find an aura of divinity or not. Perhaps, they might be the next ones to appear. Wu Fangqing consoled awkwardly. It's fine, I won't take those words to heart. Zhongxian shook his head and replied. He had no idea why Zhao Ya and the others hadn't returned yet, but he had faith in their capabilities. Furthermore, he even prepared 5 pills for them. Nothing could go wrong. Another 4 more hours passed in the blink of an eye, and over 300 of the 1,200 cultivators who entered the Celestial Mountain had returned. However, Zhao Ya, Sun Qiong, and the others were still nowhere to be seen. Those words of ridicule had also slowly turned into disdain. The fact that those youths weren't able to make a breakthrough even after so much time had passed was concrete evidence of their lacking talent. To think that City Lord Wu actually regarded them as VIPs. How could such people be worthy of being placed on the same pedestal as them? Something is amiss. Zhongxian frowned. He could understand it if his students weren't able to return within 2 hours. They might have faced some sort of difficulty or dilemma inside. But 3 hours had already passed so far, and none of them had reached godhood yet. That clearly made no sense at all. As individuals who cultivated the simplified Heaven's Path divine art, they should be able to achieve a breakthrough much faster than him and his pathos of heaven. There was no way they would need that much time, so why were they nowhere to be seen? Worried, Zhongxian turned to Wu Fangqing and asked, City Lord Wu, do you know of any way to check if a person on the Celestial Mountain is doing fine? Check if a person is doing fine? Wu Fangqing nodded. It's indeed possible to do so, but the cost is rather steep. Each check will require 100 divine coins. The Celestial Mountain was considered to be generally safe, but it was still possible for cultivators to face danger, whether from the natural environment or from their peers. For those who were worried, there was indeed a way to check the current condition of the candidates inside. However, it was just that it was terribly expensive to do so. A slot only cost a divine coin, but each check on an individual would cost 100 divine coins. The difference in price was truly frightening. Zhongxian nodded without any hesitation. I would like to check on the conditions of those whom I have brought. He couldn't allow anything to happen to his parents, his students, or his butler. They were the people who were closest to him in the world, and he felt like he would go on a rampage if anything were to happen to them. I understand. Please follow me. Wu Fangqing nodded as he walked back into the City Lord Manor. Shall we follow them to take a look as well? What's there to see? It just means that his disciples haven't made a breakthrough, that's all there is to it. He must have a lot of money to spare. It doesn't take much time to head there to take a look. If his disciples have really found an aura of divinity but aren't able to make a breakthrough, that would really be a show to behold, don't you think so? I can't deny that. Hearing the conversation between the two, the middle-aged men who had mocked Zhongxian earlier smiled in unison as they quickly followed the footsteps of those two. They had some time on their hand anyway, and it was always a delight to see a person whose head was in the sky a moment ago being harshly tossed back to the cold, hard ground. Navigating through the City Lord Manor, it didn't take them too long to arrive in a narrow room. Wu Fangqing pointed to the wall ahead of them and said, write down the name of the person you are checking on and place 100 divine coins on the pedestal over there, and the wall will reflect the condition of the person you are looking up. Chapter 2135 Insulting the God Monarchs. After learning how the wall worked, Zhongxian unhesitatingly took out 100 divine coins and placed it on the pedestal. Wang! The divine coins disappeared, and white light began to glimmer on the wall in front, forming a screen. Zhongxian quickly walked up and wrote down Zhao Ya's name. Of everyone who had entered the Celestial Mountain, the one who was most likely to achieve a breakthrough first was indubitably Zhao Ya. Thus, he wanted to see what was going on inside that prevented her from achieving a breakthrough within the past 6 hours. Who? The screen flickered a little, and it looked as if the characters would appear on the screen at any moment. This is the time of reckoning. Do you recall what happened with Wang Xiao 3 years ago? He was unwilling to believe that his son was really a wastrel, so he spent 100 divine coins to check on his condition. But as it turned out, his son actually fell asleep on the celestial mountain. To this day, I still can't help but chuckle when I recall how his face crumbled when he saw the results on the wall. Due to how widespread that matter became, the Wang clan lost its prestige and honor overnight. Once, it was one of the top 10 clans of Twilight City, but in a matter of days, it fell to the point where it couldn't even be considered as a third-rate clan anymore. This fellow is probably doomed as well. City Lord Wu is a true pragmatist at heart. The only reason why he treated that fellow so well is probably because there is something he stands to earn from him. If that fellow loses his worth as a result of this, there's no doubt that City Lord Wu would immediately change his tune. The middle-aged men behind shook with mirth. Just as they were filling their minds with scenarios of Zhong Xian's impending downfall, they suddenly felt an unbelievably powerful and authoritative body clutching their bodies, causing their laughter to fall flat. Boom! It felt almost as if the world was caving in on them. The entire room rattled fearfully in the presence of this aura. This is the aura of a god monarch. Someone amidst the crowd exclaimed, and everyone quickly kneeled to the ground as a sign of respect. I am Monarch Fumeng of the Sky of Adamant Gold. Zhao Ya is suited to practice the cultivation techniques of our Sky of Adamant Gold, so I'll be taking her with me. A voice that seemed to be completely devoid of emotions sounded slowly from the wall. It wasn't loud, but it seemed to hammer right into one's soul. Those on the receiving end of the voice couldn't help but tremble in fear and deference. Before such a presence, they couldn't even bring up the will to retaliate at all. God Monarch. His disciple has been taken away by a god monarch. The crowd felt as if their heads were going to blow up from how ridiculous the situation was becoming. They turned to look at the young man before them with eyes filled with frenzy. They thought that the young man's disciple, like Wang Xiao's son, would probably be sleeping or lying injured somewhere on the celestial mountain. But who could have thought that she would have actually caught the eye of the god monarch, inducing the latter to fetch her personally? More importantly, the god monarch even left behind a message to explain the situation. When had the god monarchs needed to explain their decisions to others? This honor was greater than anything else in the world. They were thinking of making use of this opportunity to mock the other party, but who could have thought that things would turn out in such a manner? They turned their heads toward Zhong Xian, expecting the young man to lose himself amidst happiness, but what they saw instead was the frown between the young man's brows tightening. The young man's face was growing so dark that it looked as if it would drip ink. To have one's disciple taken away and trained personally by a god monarch, there was probably no greater honor than that in the world. Shouldn't he be so happy that he could skip in joy? Why would he have such an expression on his face instead? Young Master Zhong Xian, hurry up and thank the god monarch for his benevolence. Wu Fangqing tugged at Zhong Xian's robe and urged. It was one thing to offend others, but offending a god monarch. There was no one in the world that could possibly save him from the wrath of a god monarch. But before he could finish his words, the young man's angry voice had already echoed in the room, *T. Are god monarchs that arrogant as to take away my people without my permission? Are they bandits without any pride and honor? Zhong Xian was on the verge of blowing up from anger. Did the god monarchs think that they could do as they please? That was his disciple. How could they take her away from him without even informing him? That was too shameless. Master. Hearing those words, Zhong Jiao nearly burst into the tears. Didn't you emphasize again and again to me the importance of humility and low profile? Yet, you actually lost your temper and berated a god monarch when your student has been taken away by the latter. Is this what you mean by humility and low profile? Even though it will be beneath the god monarch's standing to settle the score with you, still, is it really all right for you to insult them so openly? While Zhong Jiao was on the verge of fainting from shock, it saw the young master writing down Zheng Yang's name on the wall. Barely after his name was written down, another powerful aura suddenly burst from the wall once more. I am the monarch Shuayang of the Sky of Blazing Sunday. Zheng Yang has the aptitude for the cultivation techniques of our Sky of Blazing Sun, so I'll be taking him away with me. Screw you. How can you lot be so shameless? Zhong Xian was on the verge of going insane. Getting a really bad feeling about this, He quickly wrote down Lu Chong's name on the wall as well. I am Demon Monarch Chenkuan of the Sky of Drifting Spectre. Lu Chong has displayed an exceptional talent for the cultivation techniques of our Sky of Drifting Spectre, so I'll be taking him away with me. Zhongxian felt even more lightheaded. He hurriedly wrote down the names of his other direct disciples too. I am Fairy Linglong of the Sky of Linglong. Wang Ying and Wei Ruyan fit my palate, so I'll be taking them away with me. I am the Cloud Dragon Monarch of the Sky of Cloud Dragon. Kong Shiyaro and Liu Yang have caught my eye, so I'll be taking them back with me. As Zhongxian went through the names of his disciples, the god monarchs made their appearances one after another, each of them leaving some words behind. By the end of which, Wu Fangqing and the others were left completely dazed. Those middle-aged men who had come along to watch Zhongxian's humiliating downfall hadn't expected things to turn out like that instead. The elusive god monarchs actually appeared one after another, almost as if they were watching a street parade. One must know that they were the top existences of the world, and most people wouldn't even get to see them once in their entire lifetime. Yet, why the heck were they suddenly appearing all at once? Wasn't this a little too much? While swallowing mouthfuls of saliva, the middle-aged men looked at one another, and they could see the horror in each other's eyes. How in the world did they find the courage to mock the young man's disciples earlier? Compared to the young man's disciples, their offspring were really nothing in comparison. One must know that their offspring weren't even talented enough to catch the eye of a celestial god, whereas the young man's disciples actually drew god monarchs over to snatch them up as though housewives tussling with one another over a bargain sales. Thinking about it, it was laughable how they actually felt a sense of superiority over the other party a moment ago. They immediately turned to Zhongxian anxiously, hoping to placate him out of fear that he would exact vengeance on them in the future. However, what they saw was the young man pointing at the wall in agitation and bellowing, "You bunch of shameless scoundrels. They are my disciples. My disciples." Everyone trembled even more intensely. None of them dared to speak a word at all. Insulting the god monarchs. Was this fellow insane? Young master. What happened to low profile? Zhongjia tugged at Zhongxian's robe as it begged with tears in its eyes. It thought that its master was a smart and reliable person, but in this very moment, it could almost see itself meeting its end at its master's recklessness. On the other hand, Wu Fangqing felt the world spinning around him. He was pinching himself so hard that his flesh was going to tear off, but he was so shocked that he couldn't feel a thing at all. After berating the god monarchs for a while, Zhongxian finally calmed down a little. Looking at this from a rational standpoint, it was not necessarily a bad thing for the god monarchs to take Zhao Ya and the others away. Given the limited resources he had on hand, it would be hard for Zhao Ya and the others to raise their cultivation swiftly if they were to follow him. As much as he hated to admit it, the god monarchs could provide much better conditions for them. What about my parents and son Qiong? He had nurtured his direct disciples from young, nurturing and cleansing their bodies with his heaven's path Zhenqi. It was understandable why they would catch the eye of the god monarchs. But when it came to son Qiong and his parents, they didn't build their foundation well, and their age was also on the higher side. It should be unlikely for them to catch the eyes of the god monarchs. He quickly wrote his mother's name, Wang Mengya, down on the wall. I am an envoy from the Sky of Heavenly Sword. I'll be imparting Sun Qiong, Zhong Zhenxing, and Wang Mengya swordsmanship. I'll be sending them back to your side after their training is complete. This time around, a calm voice sounded from the wall. Even the secluded Sky of Heavenly Sword has sent an envoy over. Everyone was rendered speechless once more. Just like the Sky of Freedom, the Sky of Heavenly Sword was closed off from the rest of the firmament, making it a mysterious existence to the rest of the world. As such, it was perplexing why it would join in the crowd this time around just to teach 3 semi-divinities swordsmanship. Of the 14 people that Zhongxian had brought, 11 of them were taken away by the god monarchs and the remaining 3 were going to learn swordsmanship from an envoy of the Sky of Heavenly Sword. Heavens, just what kind of fortuitous encounter was this? Alright then. Seeing that at least his parents and son Qiong hadn't taken away, Zhongxian heaved a sigh of relief. At least, they left some people for him so that he wasn't all alone. That being said, It would probably take some time for his parents and son Qiong to grasp the swordsmanship from the sky of heavenly sword. Zhongxian would have never thought that the trip to the celestial mountain would end like that. Heaving a helpless sigh, he turned around, only to see everyone kneeling on the floor, looking at him with admiration gleaming in their eyes. He immediately recoiled in shock. It took him a while before he realized what they were up to. Given that his disciples had come under the tutelage of the god monarchs, it was clear how they should act around him in the future. Shaking his head, he said, "I don't wish to be in the center of attention, so I hope that you can keep whatever you have seen here today a secret." He could already imagine the hassle that would occur if others were to learn of this matter. Perhaps, some might even view him as a threat and attempt to make a move on him. In the end, it was still wiser for him to maintain a low profile and continue life as it was. You don't like to be in the center of attention. The lips of the crowd twitched upon hearing such unbelievable words. Those words don't seem to hold much credibility after watching how you berated those god monarchs without holding back at all. Even though that was what they were thinking on the inside, they were smart enough not to allow it to show on their faces. Nodding their heads obediently, they replied, "We understand. Our lips are sealed. Let's head back out," Zhongxian replied before taking the lead out of the room. While walking back to the main hall, he turned to Wu Fangqing and asked, "City Lord Wu, do you have any sword art manuals that I can browse through here?" He knew that it would take some time for his parents and son Qiong to return, and there was no way he could leave without them too. So, he decided to settle this matter first. He was no longer fully reliant on the Library of Heaven's Path for his cultivation techniques and battle techniques, but it was still important for him to acquire new knowledge so as to broaden his horizon. It would be foolish to not tap into the wisdom of the predecessors and attempt to do everything by himself. He would just be making things difficult for himself for no reason. Only with a vast base of knowledge would he be able to create more profound techniques, and that was the most sustainable way for him to continue growing stronger. "Young Master Zhongxian, our clan has plenty of books that you can refer to. Our clan has quite a notable collection as well. I'll have my subordinates send some over this instant. I dare not say for other things, but our clan is known for the diverse array of cultivation techniques on our shelf." Before Wu Fangqing could respond, the middle-aged men at the back had already volunteered their services subserviently. This was the perfect opportunity for them to suck up to the young man, so they were more than happy to do him this favor. "I'll be troubling the rest of you then." Seeing how passionate this group of people were, Zhongxian accepted their goodwill. They would probably live in fear if he didn't give them a chance to redeem themselves after all of the mockings they had done. Zhongxian first entered the City Lord Manor's library, and it took him 4 hours to collect all of the books inside. Shortly after he was done, the middle-aged men returned with the full collection of books they had, so he quickly began browsing through those as well. It took him another 6 hours to clear everything. Most of the manuals in Twilight City were limited at high-tier God Realm, and there was very little that covered the Celestial God Realm. Nevertheless, it still gave him a much deeper understanding of the firmament and the cultivation techniques that were practiced here. "I reckon that my next realm will be regarding the ties between a teacher and his students," Zhongxian thought. After what he had gone through today, he found a new direction for the next level of his pathos of heaven. While he hadn't worked things out yet, with a concrete direction to work toward, it shouldn't take him too long to perfect the theory. Once everything was in place, he should be able to become a celestial god easily. Chapter 21:36 Anima of Yearning. A day as my teacher, a lifetime as my father. Due to the culture of the master-teacher continent, he had a very firm view of what the relationship between a teacher and his students should be. This was especially so after the time he had spent with Zhao Ya and the others. Even though they were not related by blood, they were already closer than kin. Thinking about his students filled him with many different emotions, such as the worry for their safety, the sorrow of their parting, the delight at their achievements, the expectations for their future. These feelings filled his chest, and just like hard liquor, they were slowly maturing in his heart. Even though he had the ingredients in place, creating and mastering a feasible cultivation technique was not something that could be done on the spur of a moment. So, instead of rushing right into it, he chose to broaden his understanding of the firmament first. He immersed himself in his studies for an unknown period of time, till a voice in the distance suddenly called out to him, "Young master." Opening his eyes, he realized that Sun Qiong and the Xingmeng sword saints were already standing right in front of him. Not only had they already reached godhood, they had managed to advance their cultivation to the same level as him, high-tier god. Not only so, he could sense the sharpness of a sword from their very presence, creating an unfathomable aura around them. That swordsmanship. Zhong Xian frowned. As someone who had created a heart of intertwined threads, he was someone who had already found his own path in swordsmanship, creating a style that belonged to him and him alone. This was what sword practitioners termed as the level of transcendence. He could tell with a glance that the sword intent that the three of them had practiced was vastly different from before. For example, the swordsmanship that Sword Saint Xing had practiced previously tapped into the temporal laws of the world. It was built upon the fusion of swiftness and slowness, a little similar to Taiji. However, after undergoing the swordsmanship training of the envoy from the sky of Heavenly Sword, his sword intent felt more like a sealed fortress, embracing the concept of protect. While protect might have appeared to carry a similar meaning to defense, they were two vastly different concepts. Defense was about fending off all malicious intent that was coming at one, similar to what a tortoiseshell was to a tortoise. On the other hand, protect encompassed the idea of counterattack as well. It was about using any means to eliminate the danger. Is this the swordsmanship of the sky of Heavenly Sword? Zhong Xian asked curiously. This is the swordsmanship imparted to us by an expert of the sky of Heavenly Sword. You went through all sorts of hardships when you were younger, and we weren't able to give you the love and protection that a parent should offer to their child. So, we swore we won't let any more harm come to you, even at the expense of our lives, Sword Saint Meng said with a solemn nod. Having to put her child through the turmoil of having his bloodline stripped would always remain an unhealable wound in the depths of her heart. She was determined to never let anything similar happen again. It just so happened that the conceptualization of the sky of Heavenly Sword's sword intent was aligned with her state of mind, thus allowing her swordsmanship to grow by leaps and bounds. In less than a day, not only did she manage to reach a new height in her mastery of swordsmanship, her cultivation had advanced greatly as well. Zhong Xian turned to look at his father, and even though the latter remained silent, his eyes were unwavering like his mother. Last but not least, he turned to look at Sun Qiong, and the latter scratched his head awkwardly and explained, "Well, young master, you are my backing and my greatest source of support. It goes without saying that I must ensure your safety, right? Or else, how am I to brag and show off before others?" Hearing those words, Zhong Xian could not help but chuckle a little. While the level of swordsmanship of those three was not on par with him, it was heartening to see that they finally had the ability to protect themselves. Furthermore, he could tell that they were already on the verge of achieving a breakthrough to become celestial gods. With a celestial god-tamed beast and 4 high-tier gods, not to mention that there was also the enigmatic little yellow chick, they had finally accrued enough power for them to at least make a place for themselves in the firmament. City Lord Wu, may I know if you have heard of the spirit god? Zhong Xian asked. While he was browsing through the books earlier, he could not help but notice that there were no records regarding the spirit god. However, based on what he had heard from Du Qingyuan, there was no doubt whatsoever that Luo Ruoxin was in the firmament. Previously, due to his lack of strength, he had worried that asking too much could bring trouble to himself, so he had not dared inquire carelessly about this matter. However, now that they had all become high-tier gods, they would be leaving Twilight City very soon. So, it was time for him to start gathering some news regarding Luo Ruoxin. The fact that she was able to traverse through the dimension barrier of the firmament meant that she was likely a god king at the very least. Considering the limited number of god kings in the firmament, it should not be too difficult for him to acquire some news on her. While Mo Yuan might not know too much about the god kings and god monarchs of the world, as the head of Twilight City, Wu Fangqing was likely much more knowledgeable than him. Spirit god. Wu Fangqing contemplated for a long while before shaking his head. I'm afraid I have never heard of such a person. The firmament is vast and boundless, and there are countless experts that roam the lands. Inevitably, there are a lot of people I haven't heard of. That being said, do you know what kind of unique abilities or battle techniques that the spirit god you speak of specializes in? I think that would be a good place for you to start your investigation from. There were simply too many aliases in the firmament, and there were some people who went by multiple aliases as well. For example, most addressed God Monarch of the Sky of Drifting Spectre as Demon Monarch Chenkuan, but there were also those who addressed him as Demon Emperor Chenkuan, and so on. Even though the alias spirit god did not ring a bell with him, he should be able to deduce a thing or two based on what this spirit god was capable of. Unique abilities. I guess it would be the use of rituals then. She's able to perform spatial teleportation through the use of rituals, Zhongxian replied. When he met Luo Ruoxin on the Master-Teacher continent, most of the cultivation techniques and battle techniques that she displayed were those that were present on the Master-Teacher continent. As such, none of them could be considered her specialty. However, if one spoke about the feats that she had achieved so far, her ability to descend or ascend from world to world through the use of rituals was indubitably an extremely powerful ability. Through the books he had just read, he realized that not even conferred god kings were necessarily capable of such a feat. Spatial teleportation? Wu Fangqing frowned a little. The spatial teleportation you speak of should be referring to instantaneous movement through space, right? That's a feat that only god monarchs are able to pull off. So, I don't think that I'm in a good position to talk too much about it. As for rituals, I'm not too sure for the other 8 skies, but I do know that our Sky of Drifting Spectre is particularly proficient in that. Most of the celestial gods and god kings in Royal City are able to summon the souls of the dead through the use of rituals. The Sky of Drifting Spectre specializes in rituals? Zhongxian was surprised. Indeed. In every major city of the Sky of Drifting Spectre, there is something that we call the Netherworld Pool. Twilight City has one as well. It absorbs the anima of yearning coming from those living in the city to regather the souls of heroic spirits. The process is extremely slow, but it is definitely doable, Wu Fangqing said. Absorbing the anima of yearning to regather the souls of heroic spirits. What is the anima of yearning, and how are the souls of heroic spirits regathered? Zhongxian was a little confused. Perhaps because this concerned the secrets of the Sky of Drifting Spectres, there were no records about this in the books that he had read. On the other hand, knowing how esteemed the young man standing before him was, Wu Fangqing did not dare hide anything from him. To put it simply, the anima of yearning refers to one's desires and yearnings. For example, if a loved one passes away, it's normal for a person to want to somehow reverse it all. This desire gives rise to the anima of yearning, which can be absorbed and accumulated in the Netherworld Pool. Over time, it nourishes the fragmented souls within the Netherworld Pool and bestows upon them consciousness. However, this is an extremely lengthy process, easily taking centuries, millenniums, and even dozens of millenniums. Ordinary humans won't live long enough to see to the end of the process. Once they pass away, the anima of yearning fueling the regathering of the fragmented soul will come to a halt as there's no one else who remembers such a person anymore. As such, even if ordinary cultivators were placed inside the Netherworld Pool, it's impossible for them to be revived. However, it's a different case for the kin of God Kings. God Kings have a much longer lifespan, allowing them to provide a constant supply of the anima of yearning to the Netherworld Pool, so more often than not, the person that they yearn are able to return back to the world. At the same time, for those who have made a meritorious contribution to the Sky of Drifting Spectre, they will enjoy the privilege of having their ancestral tablet put up on altars after their death. Over time, the anima of yearning of those who pay respects to them will build up, allowing them to return to the world. I see. Zhongxian nodded in realization. He did not expect the Sky of Drifting Spectre to actually have such a side to it. Using the anima of yearning to reconstruct the souls of the dead, that was indeed a formidable feat. Sword Saint Meng could not help but ask. In other words, as long as a person who has died is remembered by the living, there's a good chance that they will be able to live an eternal life in the Netherworld Pool? I guess you could say so. Wu Fangqing nodded. As long as a person was remembered, they would constantly receive the anima of yearning, allowing them to remain alive in the Netherworld Pool. Of course, the amount of anima of yearning one received would also affect whether one was able to take form and regain consciousness. However, The key to it is that a ritual must be held for the possession of the deceased to be seeded in the netherworld pool. Otherwise, the anima of yearning will not help to regather that person's soul, Wu Fangqing explained. I see. Other than the sky of drifting spectre, do you know any other powers that specialize in rituals? Zhong Xian asked on. I can't think of anything else on the spot. If you wish to know more about this, it would help if you made a trip over to Royal City. The people over there are better connected, so you should be able to find out what you need over there more easily. Oh right, your business partner, Qi Linger, is someone from Royal City. She should have some connections over there that can help you acquire news on what you need, Wu Fangqing said. Oh, all right, I understand. Thanks for your help, Zhong Xian replied. With his business at City Lord Manor done, he quickly returned to his residence and instructed Sun Qiong to send a message over to Qi Linger. In less than 15 minutes, a seductive lady was already standing at the entrance of the residence. Young Master Zhong, Qi Linger's attitude was particularly respectful. Even though she had no idea which power Zhong Xian was from, she knew very well that she would be courting death if that someone of her caliber dared oppose someone who possessed the bloodline of a god monarch. I need you to help me look into something. Have you ever heard of the spirit god or Luo Ruoxin? Zhong Xian asked. Qi Linger pondered for a moment before shaking her head in response. I don't think I've heard of those names before. Then, do you have any connections that can help me look into this matter? Zhong Xian asked. I can do that, but I'll have to return to Royal City first. Twilight City is simply too remote, so it's hard to find out anything here, Qi Linger replied. If that's the case, I'll have to trouble Miss Qi to follow us to Royal City. May I know if you have time for that? Zhong Xian asked. Even the strongest individual in Twilight City, Wu Fangqing, was only a low-tier celestial god. If Zhong Xian wanted to advance to greater heights and learn more about the firmament, he would have to head to a higher-tier city. However, the issue was that he did not have any connections in Royal City, which would make it terribly difficult for him to move around. Without a doubt, things would be much more convenient if he could tap into Qi Linger's connections. Ha ha ha. Since it's you who has made this request, young Master Zhong, I am more than delighted to be of assistance to you. Qi Linger's eyes lit up in excitement as she hurriedly nodded in response. She was just thinking of how she could get on good terms with this young man when this opportunity fell right into her lap. Her shrewd mind was already calculating the benefits she would stand to gain from strong ties with someone who possessed the bloodline of a god monarch. So, she put on a slightly hesitant look and remarked worriedly, it's just that. Feel free to tell me if you need anything. I don't expect you do this favor for me for free, Zhong Xian replied. He knew that Qi Linger was not a generous person. The only reason she had agreed to help him was because she expected to receive something in return. I'm relieved to hear those words from you. Well, it's actually not that big a matter, so let's discuss the matter further when we arrive at Royal City. Don't worry, I have no intention of forcing you to do something against your own will, Qi Linger said. Very well. Zhong Xian nodded. If the other party was unwilling to speak, there was no need for him to force her into it. How far is Royal City away from here? How do we get there? Sun Qiong asked. The Royal City of the Sky of Drifting Spectre is millions of li away from here. If we ride a divine beast there, the chances are that we won't reach our destination even after tiring ourselves to death. A more feasible way is to use the teleportation formations, and it just so happens that there's one in Twilight City, Qi Linger said with a smile. Teleportation formation? Zhong Xian frowned. There was actually such a thing in Twilight City. Why had he not heard anyone talking about it then? Chapter 2137 Dusklight City. Qi Linger nodded. That's right. The ability of moving through space is modeled after the god monarch's ability of instantaneous movement. It allows one to traverse millions of li instantly without any restraints. However, the teleportation formation is a facility that only the city lord and nobles are allowed to use. It's completely off-limits to ordinary cultivators. It's something that only the city lord is able to use. Zhong Xian frowned. If that was really the case, the restrictions to use the teleportation formation would really be tight. It was no wonder most ordinary cultivators had not heard of it before. That's right. Rather than to phrase it as a special privilege, it's more like a condition to protect those who are being teleported. As you might have heard, the firmament stands at the top of the myriad worlds, so the spatial laws governing the firmament are exceptionally powerful. Even conferred god kings have trouble trying to overcome them. For this reason, using the teleportation formation can create major spatial turbulence that poses great risk to the ones using it. Those who aren't powerful enough will swiftly be torn to shreds, Qi Linger explained. The City Lord token that each City Lord has contains the anima of yearning of the entire city, allowing him to remain impervious to the dangers of the spatial turbulence. Anima of yearning? Zhong Xian repeated contemplatively. That was the second time he had heard this term. The act of obeying the laws set by the City Lord is a symbol of subservience to the City Lord. If something happens to the City Lord, the entire city will descend into chaos, resulting in hardship for the populace. So, the desire for peace and stability contributes to the anima of yearning within the City Lord token, protecting their wishes. It's for this reason that the newly ascended Heaven Subjugation Monarch is intent on acquiring the recognition of the 9 God Monarchs. This is because the recognition of the 9 God Monarchs represents the acknowledgement of all life forms within their jurisdiction, thus allowing him to gather more anima of yearning, Qi Linger explained. Hearing those words, Zhong Xian nodded in realization. It would appear that the so-called anima of yearning was an extremely powerful and important force in the firmament. He was convinced that the Heaven Subjugation Monarch was Kongsha, and based on what he knew about the world's teacher, the latter was a person who was devoted to the betterment of the world. In contrast, the latter viewed fame and honor with little importance. So, the very act of him forcing the 9 God Monarchs to acknowledge him was out of character, and it had left Zhong Xian perplexed for quite some time. However, it seemed like this was the reason behind it. The very act of recognition from others would allow him to obtain the anima of yearning, allowing him to further his goals. So, if I wish to head to Royal City or anywhere else within the firmament without any impediment, I need to acquire the identity of a City Lord? Zhong Xian asked. That's right, Qi Linger replied with a smile. That's simple. I'll head to the City Lord Manor right now with little Jiao to slit Wu Fengqing's throat, Sun Qiong said. Funnily enough, after the first quarrel they had with one another, Sun Qiong and the phosphor-armored beast had swiftly gotten closer with one another, and they had become gossiping buddies. Even if Wu Fengqing had a low-tier celestial god artifact, he would still have trouble trying to deal with the phosphor-armored beast. But in response to Sun Qiong's proposal, Zhong Xian shook his head and rejected it. Wu Fengqing had not done anything to him, so it was not right for him to kill the other party just to claim his position. There's no need to go that far. Even though the firmament seems to be quite peaceful on the surface, there are actually battles going on everywhere. There are quite a few cities that are without a city lord at the moment, Qi Linger replied. Putting everything aside, I am actually a city lord as well. The territory I rule pales much in comparison to Twilight City, but still, the anima of yearning I receive in my City Lord token is enough for me to use the teleportation formation. Hearing those words, Zhong Xian's eyes lit up in excitement. It appeared that there were many ways to circumvent the rules in the firmament. It was a huge relief to hear that he did not need to resort to violence in order to acquire a City Lord token. Just for the privilege of using the teleportation token, it was definitely worth the hassle for him to become a City Lord. It was not as if he had not had his fair share of notable positions on his way here, be it a principal, a clan head, or a sect leader. Taking on another City Lord position should not be a problem at all. So, he turned to Qi Linger and asked, are there any cities nearby that are without a City Lord at the moment? Dusklight City, which is around a day's journey away from here, doesn't have a City Lord yet. The local powers have been fighting for the spot for the past half a year, but no one has been able to gain a decisive advantage over the others so far, Qi Linger said with a smile. Her information network as the underground black market boss was still rather impressive. However, that city is much larger than Twilight City, governing 3 provinces. The strongest expert there has also reached middle-tier celestial god. If even an expert of that caliber hasn't managed to become the City Lord yet, The difficulty in trying to do so is bound to be very high. There are 3 provinces under Dusklight City. Do those province lords have tokens that would allow them to use the teleportation formation? Zhong Xian asked. Of course. Young Master Zhong, it is in view of your circumstances that I am recommending Dusklight City, Qi Linga replied. She knew that Zhong Xian would likely want to take the 3 people beside him around, and it was for that reason that he was recommending Dusklight City. Otherwise, she could have just recommended any minor city. There was no need to go for a place that was as difficult as Dusklight City. That's perfect. If there aren't any other issues, let's set off right away, Zhong Xian said. Pardon me, young Master Zhong, but I need to make some preparations first. Why don't we leave here in 4 hours? Qi Linga said. Zhong Xian nodded in response. Qi Linga was extremely efficient in her work. Even though she asked for 4 hours, she was already back in the courtyard within 3. Furthermore, she brought several massive aerial divine beasts along for everyone to ride on. Stepping onto the back of the divine beasts, they swiftly made their way toward Dusklight City. They have left. Hearing that Zhong Xian had left, Wu Fengqing's face crumbled in disappointment. He had hoped to forge close ties with Zhong Xian over the next few days to get something good in return. He did not think that the latter would leave so quickly. City Lord Wu, young Master Zhong told me to pass this to you as a gift in return for all your help, Ying Fei said. Is that so? Wu Fengqing remarked with a perplexed frown as he received the jade token that Ying Fei was passing him. He placed his finger on it and infused his divine energy in, and the next moment, his eyes widened in astonishment. This. Recorded in the jade token were all the flaws in his cultivation, as well as the ways to resolve them. As long as he cultivated according to what was written there, he would be able to resolve the traumas in his cultivation and possibly achieve a breakthrough to high-tier celestial god in the future. But how did he know? Wu Fengqing was stunned. It had only been a day since he met Zhong Xian, and he had never mentioned anything relating to his cultivation or the sort before. Furthermore, the content on the jade token contained many things that he had neglected as well. Just how did the young man manage to see through all that and even formulate ways to resolve the issues? A long time later, Wu Fengqing shook his head and remarked with a deep sigh, it's not without reason that he possesses the bloodline of a god monarch. Perhaps it was meaningless to try to apply common sense to someone who had already transcended his comprehension. It was arrogance in itself to claim to understand the powers of the god monarchs. Zhong Xian's departure did not cause any visible changes to Twilight City. After all, he had been keeping a low profile ever since he arrived there, so there were not too many people who knew him. After flying for roughly a day, a massive city finally appeared before Zhong Xian's sight. In terms of width, it was 3 to 4 times larger than that of Twilight City. On the streets between tall buildings, there were many people milling about. From the moment the divine beast landed on the ground and the group entered the city, Zhong Xian could not help but frown at just how packed the streets were. It was as if he was trying to squeeze through a horde of locusts. Seeing right through Zhong Xian's thoughts, Qi Linga explained, ever since the receding of the spiritual energy, the area of habitable locations in the firmament has decreased rapidly, forcing most people to move into cities. As a result, it has led to overpopulation. Any man who has a house of 40 square meters here can already be considered rich and will have many girls leaping at him. Zhong Xian nodded in response. This was rather similar to the capitals in his previous world. Most people were frantic to squeeze into where the heart of the economy was, resulting in a scarily high population density. Houses had to be built higher and higher in order to keep up with the demand. At the same time, the prices of housing shot up insanely, reaching a level that was unaffordable for ordinary people. That was the same for the firmament. It was simply impossible to make a living outside of cities anymore, so everyone could only enter cities and hope for the best. Where do we go to compete for the seat of the city lord? Zhong Xian asked. It isn't due to the lack of eligible candidates that the Dusklight City hasn't been able to decide on a city lord thus far. Rather, it is due to the intense opposition coming from the political rivalry among different factions, Qi Linga explained. All in all, there are 3 strong contenders for the city lord position. They are namely a scion that specializes in saber arts, Lin Xie, an unaffiliated cultivator who specializes in swordsmanship, Wu Yang, and a young lady who goes by the name of Ming Xiang. The former two are middle-tier celestial gods, and both possess exceptional fighting prowess. The last one, Ming Xiang, is only a low-tier celestial god, but it would be foolish to underestimate her due to her lower cultivation. According to the rumors, she's the most fearsome of the three. Ming Xiang. Zhong Xian jotted down that person's name mentally. To be able to become a contender for such a massive city, there was no way this Ming Xiang would be an ordinary person. There aren't any complicated procedures that you have to go through in order to become a city lord. Technically speaking, all you have to do is defeat the three of them and make them acknowledge you from the bottom of their hearts, and the city lord position will be yours to take, Qi Linger said. So, young Master Zhong, who should we challenge first? In the past, one would have to clear a whole string of administrative processes and receive the approval of the Netherworld Hall before one could run as a contender to become a city lord, which effectively meant that one would have to make an application several months in advance. However, the receding of spiritual energy had resulted in a major change in the state of affairs in the firmament. It was inevitable that processes had to undergo a paradigm shift in order to cater to the needs of the changing environment. The current era was an era of scarcity, which made it inevitable that people would have to compete over the limited resources. In the cities, where most of the people and resources were concentrated, there was bound to be significant infighting and chaos. As such, it was imperative that the city lord possessed absolute strength in order to enforce order and security. Only a person who could keep everyone within the city under their rule was qualified to receive the mandate of the sky of drifting specters. Zhong Xian pondered for a brief moment before asking, "Before that, do you know where I can get some middle-tier god essence pills? I'll need to gather some before challenging them." Middle-tier god essence pills? Qi Linger did not think that Zhong Xian would suddenly request for this. She pointed to a massive building in the distance and said, "It should be possible to get some in that market over there, but I'm not sure if they will sell any to you without any connections. As you know, the god essence pills are highly sought after resources. Wait a minute, I think I know a place where we can procure them in high quantities, but it might not be easy to negotiate with that person." "Oh." Zhong Xian looked at her. "Tell me more." "He's an unaffiliated cultivator in Dusklight City, and if I'm not wrong, he seems to be in his 60s. His cultivation isn't too high, being only a high-tier god, but he specializes in pill forging. It's just that he usually keeps the pills he forges for his own consumption. At the same time, he's also a dedicated chess fan. He looks for people to play with him every day, and it's rumored that his skills are excellent. He once declared that he would give a middle-tier god essence pill to anyone who is able to beat him once. But even after so many years, no one has succeeded," Qi Linger said. "If his cultivation isn't too high, hasn't anyone thought of stealing from him before?" Zhong Xian asked with a frown. In the first place, it was weird that a high-tier god was in possession of a middle-tier god essence pill. Was he not afraid that someone would attempt to steal from him? In the other cities, perhaps the cultivators might still hold back a little out of fear of crossing their city lord, but Dusklight City was a place that did not have a city lord at the moment. As such, it was not too hard to imagine that the rules would be all over the place. Even though his cultivation is weak, he has a particularly formidable younger brother. According to the rumors, his younger brother is a god king in Royal City, and his younger brother has given him a jade token to protect him in times of danger. There were two low-tier celestial gods who once attempted to assassinate him to claim his fortune for themselves, but they ended up dying from the aura emanated by the jade token. Ever since then, no one has dared make a move on him, Qi Linger explained. Chapter 21:38 Three-Bearded Cultivator God King? Zhong Xian nodded in realization. Having read many books, he had gained a preliminary understanding of what god kings were capable of. Most god monarchs rarely appeared in public, so hardly anyone had seen them before. On top of that, most of them had washed their hands of secular affairs, meaning that it was the conferred god kings who wielded true authority. Of the 9 skies, there were only roughly 30 conferred god kings in total, averaging out to around 3 of them per sky. Directly beneath them were the god kings, and there were around 100 of them in the firmament in total, which meant that there were only 10 of them per sky. In other words, someone who could reach the level of a god king could already be considered one of the 13 strongest experts within their own territory, making them a true powerhouse of the firmament. Given that even high-tier celestial gods were no match for such experts, there was no way a low-tier celestial god would stand a chance. It would only take a mere thought from a god king for a low-tier celestial god to be utterly obliterated. It was true that middle-tier god essence pills were valuable, but most celestial gods would probably value their lives more than that. No one really knows what his name is, so most people identify him by the 3 strands of snowy beard hanging from his chin. As such, people call him the 3-bearded cultivator. He lives in the west of the city, not too far from here. If you really wish to look for him, I can take you there, Qi Linger said. Even though the influence she wielded in Dusklight City was severely limited, her intelligence network was still quite reliable. Let's go then, Zhong Xian said. If the other contenders were only low-tier celestial gods, he would still stand a chance with his current level of cultivation. Unfortunately, his rivals included middle-tier celestial gods, and he was not too confident of dealing with them as a high-tier god. The reason he had stopped cultivating previously was because low-tier god essence pills were no longer useful to him. So, his current priority was to find even more potent cultivation resources and raise his cultivation. The place where the 3-bearded cultivator resided was not too far away. It took only an hour's walk before they arrived at a relatively humble-looking straw hut. It seemed extremely out of place against the towering buildings beside it. In the capital, where every inch of land cost a fortune, to be able to own such a large plot of land to build this straw cottage meant that he was a person who had his means. Most of those who wanted to steal from him would probably think twice after witnessing such extravagance. Before even entering the straw cottage, they could already hear a voice sounding from within. "Elder, your skills in chess are extraordinary. I am really no match for you. You made a few bad moves over the course of the game, but looking at it overall, you aren't too bad yourself. Work hard and learn well, and there's a chance you might surpass me in the future." The voice of an old man echoed from within. "Elder, thank you for your pointers." Gia. The doors to the straw cottage opened, and an exquisitely dressed young man walked out with a frustrated look on his face. A subordinate followed closely behind him as they walked past Zhong Xian's side and disappeared amid the alleys of Dusklight City. Due to the 3-bearded cultivator's superior skills in chess, there are quite a few challengers who drop by his straw cottage every day. That young man should be one of them, Qi Linger explained with a smile. Then, she walked up to the straw cottage and announced loudly, "Qi Linger from Royal City's Qi clan is here to pay a visit to Elder 3-bearded cultivator. I hope that you'll spare us some of your time. I don't care whether you are from the Qi clan or the BA clan, and I have no interest in meeting you. I'll have to ask you to leave," the old man replied from within. "Elder, I have no intention of using the Qi clan's influence to force you into anything. I am sincerely paying you a visit in hopes that you can accede to our request. At the very least, I hope that you can hear us out," Qi Linger added. Had it been anyone else, the reputation of the Royal City's Qi clan would have surely made them scramble out hurriedly, fearing that they would offend her. Yet, the 3-bearded cultivator did not seem to be afraid of offending her at all. The rumors about his eccentricity were indeed true. But that being said, even though the Qi clan was formidable, its influence was mainly centered within the royal city. Besides, they could not possibly make things difficult for someone just because the other party had turned them down. That would be petty and narrow-minded. I am nothing more than a carefree old man. I don't think that there's anything I can help you with, so let's not waste each other's time, all right? The old man inside the straw cottage did not seem to be willing to get involved with the Qi clan. A slight displeased frown appeared on Qi Linger's face. She was just about to step forward and continue speaking when Zhong Xian stopped her with a raise of his hand. Then, he turned to the straw cottage and said, "Elder, I am Zhong Xian, an unaffiliated cultivator. I have studied chess quite a bit myself, and I'm interested in having a match with you." "You are interested in having a match with me?" The old man seemed to be a little moved, but eventually, he said, "I have already played 3 matches today. Return tomorrow instead." 3 matches. You might have heard that I am a fanatic chess player, but in order to prevent my hobby from getting in the way of other matters, I restrict myself to playing just 3 days every day. I played my third match of the day with that young man from earlier, so I'll have to ask you to return tomorrow if you wish to have a game with me, the old man replied. I'm afraid that I'm in a rush for time, so I might have to leave Dusklight City today. Zhong Xian shook his head. Leave if you must. What does that have to do with me? The old man harumphed impatiently. Elder, why don't you at least hear me out first? Since we are having a match, there's bound to be a victor. Since that's the case, why don't we have a bet then? Zhong Xian said calmly. To be frank with you, I'm quite proud of my chess skills. I have wandered the world in search of someone who could be a match for me, but it's unfortunate that I haven't found a worthy opponent yet. If you are able to defeat me, I'll accede to any request you have. As long as it doesn't go against my principles, I'll do anything you want. On the other hand, if I were to defeat you, I'll ask you to accede a request of mine too. How does that sound? Oh, are you sure about that? The old man asked doubtfully. He did not think that the young man would speak so proudly. Of course, Zhong Xian replied proudly. Since that's the case, I want that tamed beast behind you, the old man said. Even though the young man had not come in yet, he had already identified the young man standing right behind Zhong Xian, Zhong Jia. If not for that, he would have turned down Zhong Xian's request right away. Pardon me, but even though Zhong Jia is my tamed beast, I view him as a brother and a friend. It's against my principles to use my friends as a bet. I'll have to ask you to request something else, Zhong Xian said with a wave of his hand. Master. Zhong Jia's eyes reddened in agitation. For a moment there, it had thought that its master would accept the bet without any hesitation. After all, tamed beasts were often viewed as lesser beings in the firmament. It did not expect to hear such words from Zhong Xian. To think that its master had viewed it as its friend and brother. Just from this sentiment alone, it would not hesitate to brave through danger for him in the future. Oh! The old man also did not expect to hear such an answer from Zhong Xian either. If that's the case, there's nothing you have that I want. I don't think that there's any need for me to make such a bet with you. You feel that I don't have anything you want? Pardon me, but I beg to differ. With a light chuckle, Zhong Xian flicked his wrist, and a silhouette materialized in midair. The silhouette was standing right before a cauldron, forging a pill. His fingers flew around the place with elegant dexterity, precisely controlling the environment within the cauldron. Elder, I heard that you are rather skilled in pill forging as well. I'm curious to know if this pill forging technique of mine is enough to catch your attention. With a snap of his finger, the silhouette vanished into thin air. That pill forging technique of yours. The old man exclaimed in wonderment. Other cultivators might not have been able to see anything special from the earlier silhouette, but as a skilled apothecary, he could tell that the movements were part of an extremely ingenious pill forging technique. In fact, it was far superior to what he used. A moment later, the old man's voice sounded once more. Come in. At the same time, the doors to the straw cottage opened. Jia. An old servant stepped forward and gestured for Zhong Xian to enter. With a smile, Zhong Xian walked in without any hesitation, and Qi Ling'er and the others quickly followed him. Based on the books that he had read, Zhong Xian had found that the pill forging techniques used in the firmament were quite similar to those on the master-teacher continent. In other words, the knowledge that he had learned back on the master-teacher continent was applicable here as well, making him a top-notch theoretical apothecary here. The pill forging technique that he had displayed was just the tip of the iceberg of what he was capable of. The courtyard of the straw cottage was not too large. At the center of the courtyard, an old man was seated right before a stone table. This old man had 3 strands of beard that flowed with the wind, giving him the look of an enlightened hermit. Let's start. Without even raising his head, the old man picked up his chess piece and stared intently at the chessboard. He did not bother mentioning the bet that they had spoken about earlier or the pill forging technique that Zhong Xian had displayed. With a smile, Zhong Xian walked up to the stone table, but just as he was about to sit down, he saw the chess set on the stone table and frowned. When he heard the word chess, He had immediately assumed that it would be the same as the one he played back on the master-teacher continent. Yet, who could have known that he would be faced with a chess set that he completely could not recognize at all? He had read a lot of books regarding the chess of the master-teacher continent, and his skills are more than enough to make him a grandmaster among grandmasters. However, a different chess set meant different rules and different playing styles. How could he win in a game that he did not even know the rules of? The heck! Since they were two different games, they should have used different names for them. How misleading. Seeing how the young man was not sitting down at all, the old man finally raised his head and asked with a frown, "What's wrong? Elder, can you please spare me a moment? To me, chess is not just a hobby but a sacred ritual. I view every chess match with great respect, so I tend to take some time to condition my state of mind and prepare myself," Zhongxian said without the slightest hint of embarrassment on his face. Hearing those words, the old man's eyes lit up with a slight hint of approval. Only the truly skilled chess players would understand the sheer depths of the game and carry more respect for it. Despite the young age of the person before him, it was respectable how the other party was able to take what others viewed as a mere game so seriously. With a polite smile, Zhongxian closed his eyes and took a deep breath. His calm yet concentrated demeanor really made him look no different from a true grandmaster. But the truth was that he was desperately sending telepathic messages to Qi Ling'er and Zhong Jiao. "Do either of you know the rules of chess?" Qi Ling'er and Zhong Jiao were shocked. Did they not just hear with their own ears how the young man boasted about his chess skills? After all that had happened, it turned out that he did not even know the rules. "Bro, isn't it too late for you to start asking us for the rules now?" This was especially so for Zhong Jiao. It was so flabbergasted that it nearly froze up into a statue. When its master spoke about how unrivaled he was in the art of chess, it had really thought that its master was such a multi-talented person who could do everything under the sun. Words could not even express how speechless it was when its master asked if it knew the rules of the game. "Surely you can't be thinking that you can defeat a true chess grandmaster just by learning the rules?" Even though it was a divine beast, it had learned the game back in the days when it was walking through the streets of Twilight City disguised as a human. Sometimes, when it got too bored in the cavern, it would also study the game a little out of curiosity. The chess that the three-bearded cultivator played was officially known as the chess of Goddess Luo in the firmament. It was much more complicated than Go. The rules of the game were simple, but the sheer number of possible scenarios made it extremely difficult to master the game. It was very testing of one's flexibility in thoughts and intelligence. There were some people who immersed themselves into it their entire lifetime, only to achieve very little. In fact, there were a lot of god kings who were fans of the game yet played average. The fact that the old man was able to defeat all the experts within the city showed that he was a true grandmaster in the game. Zhong Jiao thought that it was nothing more than recklessness for its master to challenge him and make such a huge bet when he did not even know the rules. "Can we please stop living life on the edge? I feel like my heart will just pop like a balloon one of these days." After a moment of speechlessness, Qi Ling'er finally started answering Zhongxian's question. "The rules of the game are..." It did not take her long to run through all the rules. The essence of the game lay not in the complexity of the rules but the ability to foresee the enemy's moves. If both players were able to read many steps in advance, it would become a true fight of wits, creating a sight of ingenuity that could nearly be called an art form. Those who could not even do that much would just end up being destroyed like ants standing before a giant. "I see." Zhongxian heaved a sigh of relief after hearing the full set of rules. It was fortunate that the rules were not too complicated. Otherwise, it might really be troublesome if he had to slowly grasp the rules in the midst of the game. The old man noticed that Zhongxian had finally opened his eyes, so he asked, "Can we begin now?" Chapter 2139 The Game, of course. Zhongxian nodded as he took a seat. He picked up a chess piece with his left hand and gestured to the chessboard with his right. "Please." Without saying a word, the three-bearded cultivator picked up a chess piece and placed it on the board. With a faint smile on his lips, Zhongxian immersed his consciousness into the library of Heaven's Path, where a book had just been materialized. Written on the book was the description of the chessboard, as well the flaws of each and every position on the chessboard. Each position on the chessboard had some flaws, some more than others. There was only one position that did not have any flaws. It indeed works, Zhongxian thought in delight. After learning the rules, he had compiled the knowledge that he knew together with the chessboard before him, and through that, he was able to uncover the flaws of each and every move in the game. As long as he followed the impeccable calculations of the Library of Heaven's path, he should be able to achieve a decent outcome. That move seems to be very steady. Zhong Jiao and Qi Ling'er anxiously looked at the move that Zhongxian made before heaving a sigh of relief each. To be honest, they had already tossed aside all hope of winning after being asked for the rules a moment ago. All they hoped was that Zhongxian would not embarrass them too much. Even though each player had only made a single move so far, they were very conventional moves that conformed to the usual starting formations. There were no hints that one of the players was actually a newbie yet. Hoo. The first few moves consisted mainly of setting up one's formation on the board, so there was no need to think too deeply yet. Experience was more than enough to determine where one should move. The three-bearded cultivator swiftly placed chess pieces down one after another, and Zhongxian followed suit. It was as if they were playing solely on instinct, barely needing any time to think. Within 5 minutes, they had already made 30 moves each. Upon catching a closer look at the circumstances on the chessboard, Zhong Jiao and Qi Ling'er were a little taken aback. Zhongxian's moves so far had been simple and conventional, similar to how an amateur player would play. There were no particularly complex ploys or traps to bait and catch the opponent. Yet, it was this simplistic playing that proved to be a huge pain in the ass to deal with. Every single move he made seemed to be impeccably calculated to achieve the greatest gains and minimize losses, so the opponent's chess ended up being tightly sealed within his pieces, unable to struggle free at all. As the person facing off with Zhongxian, the three-bearded cultivator was completely dumbfounded. How can there be no openings at all? Even though it had not been too long since the game had started, he could say with certainty that this was one of the most frustrating games he had ever played. There were no terrific plans or incredible strategies at play at all. All that was happening was the other party calculating everything that was happening with precise accuracy and curbing every single move he was making. If they were to compare it to a battlefield, where they were commanders leading their troops to battle, it would be that his formations and strategies had been completely seen through. No matter what he attempted to do, he would be blockaded in advance. Just like that, he and his troops were slowly being strangled to death. And the worst part was that despite having seen through it all, he was completely helpless to do anything. Cold sweat began dripping down his back. He swiftly switched from one advanced playing style to the next, attempting to pull off all sorts of ingenious moves that he had encountered over the years. Against any other opponent, the abrupt change in playing styles would have surely thrown the other party off, leaving him befuddled. Yet, the young man simply continued to put down his pieces one after another without any thought. It was almost as if he was playing with a moving puppet instead of a living human. Often, he would think that the young man's moves were poorly thought out and inconsequential in the game. Yet, 3 moves later, it would suddenly dawn on him just how ingeniously the young man had positioned his piece in order to corner him. It felt as if he had a fishbone stuck in his throat. He could neither swallow nor spit it out, stifling him so. This is impossible. The old man began to knock his finger against the stone table impatiently. He had absolute confidence in his chess skills. He was unmatched in Dusklight City, and even in Royal City, there were no more than a handful people who could put up a fight against him. Even if those famed grandmasters were able to defeat him, most of them would take at least 100 moves. He had only played 40 moves against the young man so far, but he was already cornered so badly. He had never imagined that a day would come where he would be rendered so helpless in a match. But what left him even more despaired was that he could not even visualize a way in which he could win the match. The opponent he was facing showed no openings. Every single move that he made only served to push him closer to the edge of the cliff, leaving him no chance at all. Wiping away the sweat on his head, he continued making a few more moves. Just like before, Zhongxian continued putting down pieces without much thought. Soon, the moves of the three-bearded cultivator got slower and slower. He was taking more and more time to think his moves through. This won't work, that won't work either. Holding the piece in his hand, he was starting to hesitate. He had no idea where he should put his pieces anymore. The young master's chess skills. Even though Zhong Jiao was not too proficient in the game, it could also tell that something was amiss. It snuck a glance at Qi Ling'er, only to see the latter with her eyes bulging out. It had thought that the young master would perform badly because he had only learned the rules a moment ago, but it seemed like it had underestimated the young master's capabilities. Every move that he had made seemed to have been revised innumerable times, ensuring that there were completely no flaws that the opponent could exploit. Despite the three-bearded cultivator's high level of mastery in the game, he still ended up being placed in a vulnerable position. Did he really just learn the game a moment ago? Qi Ling'er's eyelids fluttered up and down as she stared at the sight before her with a look of disbelief. As a divine beast, Zhong Jiao's ability to read the chess game was lacking. On the other hand, as someone who had come out of a prestigious clan, even though she was not too interested in chess, she was still rather familiar with it. The three-bearded cultivator was sufficiently skilled to stand his ground even against the chess experts of the Qi clan, but he was actually unable to do a thing about the young man before him at all. To put it bluntly, the three-bearded cultivator was getting wrecked. It was obvious that he was not a match. But did Zhong Xian not just learn the rules a moment ago? Was it really possible for someone to be so formidable playing the game for the first time? The chess piece in the three-bearded cultivator's hand never landed on the chessboard. He tossed it aside casually and shook his head bitterly. I've lost. He had no choice but to admit defeat. All his paths had been sealed, and the young man had not left the slightest gap for him to exploit at all. He would only be humiliated further if he continued the game. Thank you for going easy on me. Actually, I have also just learned the game, so I haven't fully understood most of the rules yet, Zhong Xian replied with a clasp of his fist. To be honest, he had no idea what he was doing. He only followed the most perfect moves based on the Library of Heaven's path, placing his chess pieces one after another based on that. And before he knew it, his opponent had already admitted defeat. Because he had won so easily, he could not help but think that the other party had actually gone easy on him. Going easy on you. The three-bearded cultivator thought that Zhong Xian was only saying those words out of humility. His face reddened, and he said, "Friend, you are really embarrassing me by saying those words. In truth, I already knew that I'd lost this match by the 10th move. What happened afterward was nothing more than a desperate struggle for survival. Given how tragically I've lost, you should just spare me those words. If someone of your caliber hasn't fully understood the rules yet, I really don't know what I should make of myself." If he had only lost by the difference of a piece or two, it would be understandable if Zhong Xian had said that he had gone easy on him. However, it was clear that they were not even on the same level at all. It was as if he was a low-tier god facing a conferred god-king. Even words of humility should be reasonable. Anything beyond that would just be humble bragging. "You are too polite," Zhong Xian replied awkwardly. "All right, since I have admitted my loss, you can feel free to speak of any request you have for me," the three-bearded cultivator said with a wave of his hand. "Elder, I wish to purchase the middle-tier god essence pills that you have. I hope that you can sell them to me," Zhong Xian replied. "You only want to buy middle-tier god essence pills from me?" The three-bearded cultivator was slightly taken aback. Considering how the young man had gone all the way there with an offspring of the Qi clan, he had expected the young man to have an even more difficult request for him. Who could have thought that it would be something as simple as this? While middle-tier god essence pills were not readily available on the market for ordinary cultivators, those who had some connections in Dusklight City would still be able to acquire them with ease. Most wealthy merchants and clans would have a sizable stockpile of them. Did this Grandmaster chess player really challenge him for the sake of something as minor as this? Zhong Xian nodded in response. "There's no need for you to buy them. I'll give you all 30 middle-tier god essence pills I have with me." With a flick of his wrist, the three-bearded cultivator passed 3 bottles over without any hesitation. "You are giving them to me. How can I accept such a valuable present?" Zhong Xian quickly waved his hands in rejection. He had looked into the price of middle-tier god essence pills previously, and it seemed like they were 100 times more valuable than low-tier god essence pills. Furthermore, it was a commodity that was not readily available on the market. As such, he did not think that it was right for him to accept such a valuable gift so easily. I forged them myself, and they aren't as expensive as you think. If you really feel bad about that, why don't you have a few more games with me? The three-bearded cultivator said. I would be more than willing to accompany you for a few more matches. It's just that, Elder, didn't you mention earlier that you have sworn to only play 3 matches each day? Zhongxian asked curiously. That's only because I have not met a worthy rival yet. Against a grandmaster of your caliber, even 30 matches won't be enough, the three-bearded cultivator replied with a chuckle. Zhongxian smiled as well. It was nothing much for him to play a few more rounds with the old man in repayment of so many middle-tier god essence pills. All he needed to do was follow the sequencing of the Library of Heaven's path anyway. There was no need for him to use his head. They quickly cleared the chessboard and started on another game. 5 minutes later, the three-bearded cultivator's face flushed red, and he exclaimed, "One more round." 4 more minutes later, one more. 3 more minutes later, again. 1 more minute later, all right, I admit defeat. After losing so many rounds at once, the three-bearded cultivator was starting to doubt his own life. He had thought that luck played a part in allowing the young man to play the pieces in the way he did before, but who could have known that no matter how he started the game and no matter what playing style he used, he would still end up bumping into a wall. There was completely no room for him to squeeze in a victory. There aren't too many people in the world who will be able to overcome that playing style of yours. You can easily participate in chess tournaments to earn rewards. The three-bearded cultivator looked at Zhongxian with eyes gleaming with expectations. I have no plans of joining those at the moment, Zhongxian replied. In his mind, he was just an outsider in chess who relied on the Library of Heaven's path to win. He did not think that he was qualified to join those sorts of tournaments yet. That's such a pity. Seeing that the young man had no thoughts of developing in such a direction, the three-bearded cultivator shook his head regretfully. Zhongxian quickly bade the three-bearded cultivator farewell, and the group headed back to the streets. Qi Linger shot a glance over and asked, "Shall we find a quiet place to assimilate the god essence pills first?" She could tell that the reason Zhongxian wanted the middle-tier god essence pills was to advance his cultivation, and since that was the case, the next thing he would want to do was find a quiet place to cultivate. "There's no need for that," Zhongxian replied. This response left Qi Linger bewildered. What did that mean? Did he have some other reason for gathering these pills instead of using them to advance his cultivation? Just as she was perplexed as to what the young man was up to, she saw the latter taking out the 30 middle-tier pills that he had just received and popping them one by one into his mouth, almost as if eating candy. Her eyebrows shot up in astonishment. Middle-tier god essence pills were potent medicine even for celestial gods. Ordinary high-tier gods would need at least a month of cultivation in order to assimilate the energy contained within. Yet, this fellow was eating the carrot if they were candies. Was he not afraid that his body would blow up and explode? However, the swift growth in Zhongxian's aura answered her question. High-tier god primary stage. High-tier god intermediate stage. High-tier god advanced stage. High-tier god pinnacle. In less than 2 breaths, he had already advanced 3 cultivation stages, leaving him 1 step away from becoming a celestial god. Qi Linger shuddered in frenzy. As someone from a distinguished clan, she had seen plenty of geniuses and experts. But for someone to eat pills so casually and make breakthroughs so easily, this was definitely the first time that she had seen something like that. It was as if he was not human. Was the bloodline of a god monarch really so frightening? Chapter 21. Ming Laixiang Zhongjiao also fell into a daze. Only at this moment did it realize that when the young master said that he cultivated slow, he was not trying to brag. His normal rate of cultivation was really that fast. Most cultivators would first have to condition their state and revise their cultivation technique before attempting to knock down their bottlenecks, but this young man did not have to do all of that at all. As and when he liked, he could simply channel his energy to make a breakthrough. At this moment, Zhongxian suddenly said, "Little Jiao, Come here and strike me with your fists." Knowing that the young master wanted to test his newfound strength after his breakthrough, Zhongjia stepped forward and said, "All right." It just happened that it was curious to see how powerful its master was at the moment as well. Over the past day since it had become a celestial god, it had not been slacking off. It had been practicing the cultivation technique that its master had imparted to it, and that had allowed it to resolve most of the traumas and flaws in its cultivation. Even though it had only been a single day, Zhongjia felt like it had improved more than it did over the past 10 years. Hoo! A massive fist flew over with a powerful gust of wind, carrying the deafening explosion of a sonic boom. This sight made Qi Linga narrow her eyes in shock. She could tell that the phosphor-armored beast had successfully become a celestial god, but she did not think that it would be so powerful. After all, it had just overcome its bottleneck, so it would probably take some time for it to adapt to its newfound powers. However, the strength it was displaying had far surpassed her expectations. With its tremendous strength and invincible defense, putting aside a low-tier celestial god, it would be able to stand its ground even against a middle-tier celestial god. She could not imagine how the high-tier god pinnacle Zhongxian would be able to endure such a devastating punch. Looking at the situation worriedly, she saw the young man calmly raising his hand before flicking it outward. Peng! Zhongjia was immediately sent flying, and he slammed right through the trunk of a massive tree and into a wall before the momentum of the attack finally faded. It slumped to the ground while panting raggedly for breath. Young master. Zhongjia really had no choice but to submit to Zhongxian's prowess. It had thought that it should be able to narrow the gap against its master with the recent advancements that it had made, but from the looks of it, their disparity was only getting larger and larger despite its diligence. Zhongxian turned to Qi Linga and asked, "Do you think that I'll be able to defeat the three of them with my current strength?" The reason he had challenged Zhongjia earlier was to get a gauge of his current strength, as well as to check how powerful the other three contenders for the City Lord position were from Qi Linga's mouth. "You should be able to defeat most low-tier celestial gods easily, but against middle-tier celestial gods, you are still slightly lacking. I wouldn't say that you don't stand a chance, but it'll be a really difficult fight," Qi Linga replied hesitantly. In order to become contenders for the City Lord position, those three had to be one of the strongest experts within Dusklight City. As such, despite the prowess that Zhongxian had displayed earlier, Qi Linga still did not think that his chances of winning were too great. Not to mention, after competing for the position for so long, there was no way they would submit to a young man who was not even a celestial god that easily. "Is that so? Let's look for them now then," Zhongxian said with a sigh of relief. Given that he had only advanced his cultivation from low-tier god primary stage to pinnacle, he did not think that he would be able to defeat the three of them with an overwhelming advantage. It was only normal for it to be a difficult battle. However, as long as it was not completely impossible, with his eye of insight and the library of Heaven's Path, he felt that he should still be able to emerge victorious in the end. "We're heading over just like that." Qi Linga had no idea where Zhongxian's confidence came from, and she felt a little uncertain about this matter. Thus, she advised worriedly, "Once you challenge them, you'll be officially in the race. Until the results are finally out, you'll face endless harassment from them. Young Master Zhong, are you sure you don't want to make a breakthrough to Celestial God first? Given your fighting prowess, it would be much easier for you to deal with them once you make a breakthrough." She would not have made this recommendation if it was anyone else. After all, the breakthrough to Celestial God was known to be a rather high hurdle. However, if it was Zhongxian they were talking about, given how he was able to advance 3 cultivation stages in a matter of seconds, she didn't think that it would take him too long to become a celestial god, perhaps just 3 to 5 days at most. "It's fine. I know my limits. Let's go meet them now," Zhongxian replied. The way he cultivated was very different from the others. Even though he had a general direction of where he wanted to go, it would still take him some time in order to formulate the entire cultivation technique. Furthermore, it was impossible to forcefully hasten the process since he was attempting to devise something that did not exist yet. Since that was the case, he would rather settle the matter concerning the City Lord. "If you're confident, there's no reason for me to stop you. Who do you wish to challenge first?" Qi Lingo asked. While Ming Laixiang is the weakest at the moment, she's rumored to be the most terrifying. Lin Xie and Wu Yang are roughly equally powerful, but if we really compare them, I'd say that the unaffiliated cultivator is in a disadvantageous position. So, my suggestion is that you can challenge Wu Yang first, and once you defeat him, you'll be able to replace his position. His faction will be left with no choice but to back you, and you'll be in a more favorable position. The first opponent you choose is actually really important. It will serve as the basis for others to gauge your strength and determine whether you will gain their support or not. Hearing those words, Zhongxian nodded contemplatively before saying, "Let's challenge Ming Laixiang first then." Qi Linger froze in place. Did my words go in one ear and out the other? Didn't I just say that she was the scariest of them all? Why? Qi Linger blurted out. She's the closest to us at the moment. It'll save us the trouble from walking back and forth, Zhongxian replied. While they were walking toward the three-bearded cultivator's residence earlier, he had asked about where the three contenders resided, and based on the information he had received, it appeared that Ming Laixiang lived closest to where they were. Qi Linger nearly clawed her hair out. Are you actually an alien impersonating as a human? That's clearly not how a normal human thinks. We are competing for the seat of the city lord. Look at how powerful your competition is. There's a chance that we might lose the battle. What you should be thinking about is how you can win the battle, not who's the closest to you. After all, you can't possibly be thinking of defeating all three of them in one go, right? Aren't you going to condition your state to make sure you are at your peak before challenging them? After all, you are going to fight against opponents that are stronger than you. Furthermore, won't you need time to recover after each battle? Have you even considered that? Qi Linger tried to dissuade Zhongxian from making such a reckless move, but the latter did not seem to care at all and kept insisting on fighting Ming Laixiang first. In the end, she had no choice but to follow him there. An hour later, they arrived at a residence. It was where Ming Laixiang lived. "Send in the name scroll," Zhongxian said. "I haven't prepared the name scroll yet. Each city has their own rules for challenging an opponent, and I haven't fully uncovered the rules for Dusklight City yet," Qi Linger replied. Since she was unable to talk Zhongxian out of his rashness, she could only hope to slow his footsteps a bit through this to make him calm down and think more rationally about the matter. Zhongxian shot a glance at Qi Linger and immediately understood her intentions. So, he turned to Sun Qiong and said, "You do it." "Alrighty." Sun Qiong replied excitedly. He walked up to the residence and raised his voice to a level where it shook the surroundings. "Our young master is going to compete for the position of the city lord. The person in this residence, get out here and accept his challenge, or else we'll take it as your loss." Qi Linger was stunned. Is this still considered as making a challenge? More like a provocation. The fight for the city lord position was indeed intense, but there was no need to make enemies due to this. Even if one lost the battle, it would just end with some light injuries here and there. However, after how disrespectful Zhongxian had acted, if Ming Laixiang did not retaliate viciously, others would take her lightly even if she did become a city lord. She would have to make an example out of Zhongxian in order to build up her reputation. Audacious. Who dares make a big fuss outside the young mistress' residence? Shortly after Sun Qiong spoke those insolent words, it caused a huge uproar within the residence. Those from the surrounding residences also walked out to see the face of the fool who dared to insult the great Ming Laixiang like that. Ming Laixiang was the one who was the most likely to become the city lord despite her lower cultivation. Against someone of such standing, that fool actually dared act so insolently. Just what the heck was running through his mind? With his chest puffed up, Sun Qiong roared, "If you wish to become the city lord, you should stop your yapping and obediently come out here to accept our challenge. Our young master doesn't have time to listen to your prattling. Preposterous. Someone of your caliber actually dares challenge our young mistress." But before the person could finish his words, the voice of a young lady echoed in the air. "Come in. Jia." The gates to the residence opened. Without any hesitation, Zhongxian and Sun Qiong made their way in. The courtyard of the residence was rather spacious. Standing inside was a valiant young lady with a particularly tall profile. It was a little weird to call her a young lady as she was extremely built. Looking just at her profile, it was extremely easy to mistake her for a guy instead of a girl. You wish to become the city lord? The young lady looked at Zhongxian and scoffed. Little brother, take a look at your age and cultivation. Someone like you should head back home and sleep in your mother's cradle. It's good that you have great ambition, but you should know your own limit. You seem to be terribly concerned about me, Zhongxian replied with a smile. Since I have already made that declaration, I have no intention of backing off. I'll give you two options here. You can either choose to compete with me and lose tragically, or I can give you a beauty pill and you surrender to me. Those words left Ming Laixiang a little taken aback. Beauty pill? You were the one who forged the beauty pill of Twilight City. It had not been long since the beauty pill appeared, but it had already made its name out in the world. There was hardly anyone who would not be moved by its name. Ming Laixiang was no exception. She had been born with a large bone structure, giving her a physique that was similar to a man. As a result of that, while her friends had already gotten attached and married, she could only cultivate quietly on her own. But due to that, she was able to achieve great feats in her cultivation, giving her the right to compete for the seat of the city lord. She had heard of the effects of the beauty pill from Twilight City, and she had intended to head there to purchase it. The only problem was that there were only 20 of them, and they were all sold out. She did not think that the person who had forged the beauty pill would come looking for her a day later. Indeed. Zhongxian nodded. I am the apothecary who created the beauty pill. This is Qi Ling'er. You might know her as the person who sold the beauty pills at Twilight City. Qi Ling'er? Ming Laixiang turned her gaze over and saw a seductive lady standing leisurely behind Zhongxian. Even though she had never seen the underground black market boss of Twilight City in person, she was still able to recognize the other party swiftly at a glance. Paying respects to Miss Ming, Qi Ling'er stepped forward and bowed slightly. Ming Laixiang turned to Zhongxian and asked, your beauty pill, other than making a person prettier, does it have the effect of altering a person's bone structure? In terms of appearance, she was not ugly by any means. Her only concern was her huge frame, which tended to scare other people away. I'm afraid it's hard to change a person's physique. Zhongxian shook his head. He could change a person's complexion by nourishing their skin and muscles with the heaven's pathshanqi, but the alteration of one's bone structure required a much more complicated medical procedure. It could not be done just by swallowing a single pill. If that's the case, I'll have to say that your beauty pill doesn't really hold much attraction to me anymore. Make your move. I'm interested to see just how powerful the person who forged the beauty pill is to dare openly challenge me here, Ming Laixiang said as she assessed Zhongxian from head to toe. She could tell that Zhongxian was no fool, and the fact that he dared challenge her despite so meant that he had some tricks up his sleeves. Sure. Zhongxian nodded as he whipped out a sword. It was the one that he had received from Wu Fangqing back in Twilight City. He had already tamed it into his own possession along the way. Chapter 2141 City Lord Monument T. As soon as the sword appeared in Zhongxian's grasp, his aura immediately changed. All emotions vanished from his eyes, leaving behind just the sheer intensity of his concentration. Ming Laixiang took out a whip, and with a powerful flick of her wrist, the whip shot in Zhongxian's direction. Hula! What Qi Ling'er was worried about turned out to be true. Even though Ming Laixiang was a low-tier celestial god, her fighting prowess was exceptional. She possessed the strength to stand her ground even against middle-tier celestial gods. Furthermore, her skill with the whip was also remarkable. She was able to control it to an extremely fine degree. Having no intentions of facing the whip directly, Zhongxian took a step back and tilted his body backward to dodge her attack before stabbing his sword forward. The length and flexibility of the whip was both its greatest advantage and disadvantage. It allowed for a wide range of maneuvers, but at the same time, it also made it extremely difficult to control. As a result, there were very few cultivators who chose to specialize in it. This was also Zhongxian's first time facing such a weapon. He quickly looked through all the books he had collected relating to whips in order to understand the principles behind his opponent's moves. Hualala! Ming Laixiang leaped backward to create some distance before cracking her whip several more times in Zhongxian's direction, but each and every time, Zhongxian was able to dodge it by a hair's breadth. Seeing that her attacks were not connecting at all, her complexion turned grim. Without any hesitation, she switched her tactics and launched a barrage of whips instead. In the face of a ferocious flurry of whips, Zhongxian calmly deflected them one after another with his sword. Even though he was handling Ming Laixiang's offense fairly well, it did not seem like he was interested in counterattacking at all. Is he practicing his swordsmanship? Qi Ling'er could not help but frown. It was apparent that Ming Laixiang had the advantage in terms of strength and speed, but by somehow predicting Ming Laixiang's attacks in advance, Zhongxian was always able to deal with her. The bizarre attack trajectory of the whips did little to throw him off at all. The fact that Zhongxian could accomplish this meant that he had a fairly good chance at victory. However, each and every time Zhongxian attempted an attack, he would eventually back away at the last moment instead of pressing on. It was almost as if he was afraid of hurting Ming Laixiang. More importantly, his fighting style was changing throughout the battle. There was no reason for someone to keep changing their fighting style in the midst of the battle unless they were practicing their swordsmanship. To actually think of practicing your swordsmanship while facing an enemy that is a cultivation realm stronger than you. Are you serious about this? Zhong Jia's eyes also widened in astonishment at that sight. It had no idea whether its master was doing it intentionally or not, but it was starting to wonder if its master had some sort of attention-seeking disease. No matter where its master was, he simply had to do things that would leave the mouths of others agape. Or could it be that the humans had a very different notion of what low profile meant compared to divine beasts? Humph. Ming Laixiang swiftly noticed Zhongxian's intentions as well, and her face turned incredibly livid. As the strongest contender for the city lord position, she had never been underestimated by another person in such a way before, not to mention that the other party was weaker than her. You seem to look down on me quite a bit, huh? Very well, I'll give a taste of my strongest move. The reason Lin Xie and Wu Yang don't dare fight me is because they can't deal with this move. If you wish to defeat me, you'll have to withstand it somehow. With a cold harumph, the whip in Ming Laixiang's hands suddenly shot forth like a piercing sword right toward Zhongxian's neck. It accelerated so quickly that it seemed to appear before the latter in the blink of an eye. Seeing how the speed of Ming Laixiang's whip was actually faster than his swordsmanship, Zhongxian's eyes lit up. Just as the others had thought, he was indeed practicing his swordsmanship on Ming Laixiang. He had been working on a new sword art for some time, but he had not been able to find anything that was suited to him. It was then that he realized that he needed to fight a real battle in order to spark some inspiration. For that reason, he did not bother looking into Ming Laixiang's flaws. He intended to use this as an opportunity to try things out. It had not been long since the battle began, but he had already made significant gains. He could somewhat visualize the sword art that he wanted to create. Judging from the swiftness of Ming Laixiang's whip, it was apparent that she had put her all into this attack. So, Zhongxian flicked his sword upward and released a burst of sword qi against the whip. Wang. A sword qi swiftly unfurled to form a fishnet-like shape to trap whatever stood in its way. A heart of intertwined threads. Ming Laixiang was not an easy opponent for the current him, so he could not afford to hold back against her strongest move. Otherwise, he would really be courting his own doom. Heh. However, Ming Laixiang did not appear to be taken aback by Zhongxian's move. Instead, a light chuckle escaped her lips. Who? With a slight flick of her wrist, the whip that was heading straight toward Zhongxian's neck suddenly bent slightly downward to strike his abdomen. The change in the trajectory of her attack was swift, vicious, and completely out of expectations. Even though it was not striking his neck anymore, he would still be severely injured if it landed a clean blow on his abdomen. This was her goal from the very start. Zhongxian quickly came to realization. The change happened too quickly, and Zhongxian was completely unguarded against it. It was already too late for him to do anything. Pa. Qi Ling'er widened her eyes in horror as she quickly turned over to examine Zhongxian's condition, but what had really happened was the opposite of what she had expected. Not only was Zhongxian completely uninjured, there was a slight smile on his face. Looking at his opponent, Ming Lixiang was clutching her chest, and fresh blood was seeping from the edges of her lips. She was sweating profusely. What happened? The earlier clash had ended in a flash. Qi Ling'er did not manage to clearly see what had happened. Young Master comprehended a new sword art at the very last moment. With it, he managed deflected Ming Lixiang's whip back to her, causing her to sustain severe injuries, Zhongjia explained. With its sharp eyes as a low-tier celestial god, although everything had happened very quickly, it had still managed to see the happenings clearly. Zhongxian was literally a split second away from sustaining severe injuries when he suddenly released a powerful outburst of sword qi. Not only did the powerful outburst of sword qi stop the whip in place, it even knocked it back to Ming Lixiang, causing her to suffer a rebound. Qi Ling'er was absolutely stunned. This was not just bravery anymore, it was as if he did not value his life. What if he had not comprehended the sword art in the end? What if the sword art he comprehended did not work? He could have become a cripple from that blow. The abdomen was where one's dantian was. If it had suffered a severe impact, he might have lost his cultivation for good. So, that's how it works. While the onlookers were shocked by just how reckless Zhongxian was, the person in question was currently laughing heartily. He had been stuck all this while, but the earlier clash seemed to have parted the shadows veiling his eyes. All his confusion and doubts vanished in an instant. Camaraderie of brothers. It turns out that the sword art was in my cultivation technique all along, Zhongxian exclaimed excitedly. Camaraderie of brothers was the sentiment and cultivation technique he had comprehended when he saw the little yellow chick getting killed right before his eyes. Humans were always searching the world for someone who understood them, but how many of them were able to find someone whom they could entrust their all to? The sorrow of losing such a person was no different from having one's heart torn to shreds. When Ming Lixiang's whip was about to approach his abdomen, everything had suddenly made sense to him. He had allowed those emotions to guide his sword art, and not only did it deflect Ming Lixiang's attack, it was even able to injure her. I admit defeat. Ming Lixiang surrendered. She had no choice but to admit defeat. She had been certain that she was going to win the battle when the sword art appeared completely out of nowhere, catching her off guard. What made it worse was that she could not even tell how it had all happened. If she was at her peak, she could have still tested the other party out a little to see if she could decipher the sword art. Unfortunately, the earlier retaliation had left her severely wounded, leaving her no choice but to surrender. Seeing that he had won the battle, Zhongxian glanced at Qi Ling'er and said, "Let's head to Lin Xie's residence." He still had 2 opponents left to defeat. Since he had already dealt with the most troublesome one of them all, he shouldn't have too much trouble with the other 2. Wait a moment. Seeing that Zhongxian was going to leave, Ming Lixiang quickly got to her feet and said, "With your strength, I reckon that Lin Xie and Wu Yang won't be a match for you either. However, the real reason none of us have become the city lord yet isn't because none of us were able to claim a decisive advantage. Rather, it's due to our inability to assimilate the City Lord monument, which is an insignia of one's identity as the City Lord. As long as you are able to assimilate it, they will surrender of their own accord." City Lord monument. Zhongxian repeated. The previous City Lord of Dusklight City was a middle-tier celestial god, and he died fighting in the flood of spiritual energy. After his death, his soul fused together with a stone monument. In order to become the next City Lord, one must receive his recognition, and none of the 3 of us have been able to do so, Ming Lixiang explained. "Where is the monument?" Zhongxian asked. It would be more convenient if he could get the other 2 to surrender just by assimilating the City Lord monument. He would be spared the trouble of traveling here and there. "I'll take you there. However, I'll just tell you in advance that it's no easy feat to obtain its approval," Ming Lixiang warned. The young man standing before her possessed unnaturally great talent and fighting prowess. His ability to defeat her despite only being a high-tier god said as much. That being said, she still did not think that he stood a good chance. This was because the crux to assimilating the City Lord monument had nothing to do with one's cultivation or talent but whether one could catch the eye of the previous City Lord. In the 10 years since the previous City Lord died, many experts had tried to assimilate it, only to fail in the end. No one was able to figure out what the previous city lord wanted. She felt like the young man before her would be no exception. They quickly left the courtyard and proceeded ahead. It did not take them long to arrive at the heart of the city. It was a massive square, and erected at the center of it was a humongous stone monument. The laws and commandments of Dusklight City were inscribed on it. The stone monument was over 10 meters tall, and a shimmer seemed to swim ceaselessly across its lustrous black surface. Even at first sight, one could tell that the monument was made out of no ordinary materials. "That over there is the City Lord Monument." Ming Laixiang introduced it to Zhong Xian. Nodding quietly, Zhong Xian walked up to the City Lord Monument and lightly placed his hand on it. A book materialized in the Library of Heaven's Path. City Lord Monument, made of dark jadeite. Seals the fortune of Dusklight City. Harnesses a sliver of celestial god Yeyu's will. Flaws. There were detailed descriptions on the structure, history, and flaws of the City Lord Monument, but there was nothing that told him how he could assimilate it. "We have strictly obeyed and enforced the rules inscribed on the City Lord Monument, and we have also made sure to pay the utmost respect to the previous City Lord's soul. But for some reason, the previous City Lord refuses to acknowledge anyone," Ming Laixiang said in frustration. "I see." Zhong Xian nodded in response. He activated the Eye of Insight and began examining the City Lord Monument carefully. Vaguely, he could sense an indignant will sealed within the City Lord Monument, struggling and roaring furiously. This made Zhong Xian frown a little. He slit his finger and flicked a droplet of blood, harnessing his will toward the monument. Hula. As soon as the sliver of his will came into contact with the monument, he sensed a powerful force gushing in his direction, seemingly wanting to devour his soul. There's indeed something weird about this. Zhong Xian was taken aback. Typically speaking, if a cultivator failed to assimilate an artifact, the blood essence containing their will would be rejected. Even though the monument refused to be assimilated, it had still devoured his blood essence. This was different from what he had seen before. But again, it was not as if it made much of a difference to him anyway. With a light chuckle, Zhong Xian was just about to use his Heaven's Path Shenqi to destroy the will within and re-enchant the monument when he suddenly noticed something and frowned. As if noticing his intentions, the spirit in the monument swiftly diffused itself all over the monument. If he attempted to destroy the spirit in its current state, the monument could very well sustain severe damage as well. If he was caught destroying the City Lord Monument, he would surely become the public enemy of the entire Dusklight City. By then, there was no way anyone would accept him as the City Lord. It seemed like the forceful approach would not work. However, he did not know what the will within the monument really wanted. This was a huge dilemma. Zhong Xian's complexion turned grave. Chapter 2142. City Lord Zhong Xian turned to Qi Linger and asked, "Is it the same for other cities? Do other cities have City Lord monuments that City Lords infuse their will into?" Since she was a City Lord, she should be familiar with the processes. Each city has a City Lord monument, and it's indeed used as a record of the city rules. However, I have never heard of a City Lord infusing his will into it. That would be equivalent to enchanting the City Lord monument, turning it into an artifact. It would cause the anima of yearning of the entire city to be focused on the monument, Qi Linger replied. She was also a little bewildered after hearing the story. She would have never thought that anyone would do such a thing. The City Lord monument represented the laws of the city. Infusing one's will into it would cause the anima of yearning to flow into the will, nourishing it. For the City Lord, this was not necessarily a good thing. For one, there was no guarantee that the sliver of will would remain under his control even after it had been nourished. It was a highly dangerous move to make. Zhong Xian turned to Ming Laixiang and asked, "What was Celestial God Yeyu's personality like?" Celestial God Yeyu was the previous City Lord of Dusklight City who had passed away during the flood of the spiritual energy. He was a righteous and impartial man. The citizens often sing his praises, Ming Laixiang replied. It's because none of us can match his character that we aren't able to assimilate the monument. This is also why Dusklight City has remained without a City Lord for so many years. Zhongxian nodded in realization. That explained things. Just the convenience of being able to use the teleportation formations made it worth it for one to become a city lord. There were bound to be many experts vying for the spot. So, it was bizarre how Dusklight City had remained without one for almost a decade. From the looks of it, it was not that easy to become a city lord. This was probably why Ming Laixiang did not seem particularly concerned that she had lost to him. This was because she knew that one would have to first overcome the City Lord monument in order to become the City Lord, or else he would just be nothing more than another contender in the running, just like her. Since I can't destroy the will inside, I should just try to assimilate it just like an ordinary weapon. While it might take years for others to tame an artifact spirit, Zhongxian was able to circumvent the lengthy process with his abilities. So, he walked up to the black monument once more and tapped it a few times. Then, he whispered silently to it. Wang. The City Lord monument shook a little, but it refused to submit to him. Zhongxian's usual method was to employ both the carrot and the stick. He would offer the artifact two choices: submit to him and rise to greater heights, or continue refusing and be destroyed. However, such a trick would not work on the City Lord monument. This was because it knew that the young man before it would not dare destroy it. Seeing this, Zhongxian chuckled softly and whispered to the monument, I know what you are thinking. You knew that you would meet with danger, so you infused your will into the monument ahead of time, hoping that you could revive from the anima of yearning supplied by the entire city. I can't say that it's a bad plan, but you made a miscalculation: the amount of time it will take for you to succeed. Dusklight City has been without a city lord for nearly a decade now, so there has been no one to enforce the rules you have implemented. As a result, the amount of anima of yearning you are receiving has decreased tremendously. You won't succeed at this rate. I'm sure you know that deep down. I don't have much desire to become the City Lord. All I want is to obtain the City Lord token so that I can make use of the teleportation formations. If I become the City Lord, I'll have the city continue enforcing the rules you have set and even allow your will to remain inside the monument. Only the rise of a new City Lord will bring order back to this city, and only then will you continue receiving a steady supply of anima of yearning. Zhongxian's voice was infused with the impartation of heaven's will, allowing him to sway the emotions of the will within the monument. The indignant and hostile intent that was within the monument a moment ago slowly cooled down. He had no interest in being a City Lord at all. Even if he, just like Kongsha, needed anima of yearning in the future, the amount he required would likely be far more than what the entire Dusklight City could offer him. So, he had no qualms allowing most of the anima of yearning to go to the previous City Lord. It was also better for him that the rules did not change. He had no spare time to care about that anyway. Make up your mind quickly. I am not a person with a lot of patience. You should be able to tell that I'm an outsider, and I have no attachments to Dusklight City. I don't mind not becoming the City Lord, but I'll have this monument destroyed before leaving this place. I'll give you 10 breaths to think it through. It was those who had nothing to lose that should be feared the most. They would not hesitate to do the unthinkable, and there was nothing that could scare them. After saying his piece, Zhongxian took 2 steps back and waited patiently for the monument's response. How did it go? Are you able to assimilate it? Ming Laixiang asked with a slight smile. Even though she posed it as a question, she already knew that the young man had failed. On the inside, she was greatly relieved that the monument was not responding to the young man. You might be stronger and more talented than me, but that doesn't mean a thing before the City Lord monument. Ming Laixiang was expecting to see a frustrated look on the young man's face, but what she saw instead was the young man calmly opening his mouth and counting, 10, 9, 8, 7. Ming Laixiang was confused. I am asking you whether you were able to assimilate it, so why are you counting down instead? 3, 2, 1. Having counted down to 0, Zhongxian looked at the monument before him and said, make your choice. As he said those words, he quietly gathered a surge of sword qi at the tip of his finger and pointed it at the monument calmly. His relaxed demeanor showed that he had no particular deference toward the monument at all. Sensing that the young man would really carry out his threat if it did not agree to it, A crisp buzz echoed from the monument as it began shaking intensely. "That's more like it," Zhongxian said with a satisfied smile. He dripped a droplet of blood harnessing his will onto the monument, and it was absorbed right away. This was a sign that the monument had accepted him as its master. This. Ming Laixiang was stunned. She had tried everything that she could think of to convince the monument to accept her, but from the start to the end, it had never reacted to her. On the other hand, all the young man did was count down from 10, and the monument submitted to him just like that. What was with this discrimination? Since I have assimilated the monument, does it mean that I am the city lord now? Zhongxian asked. He could sense that a portion of his will was already embedded within the monument. Ming Laixiang was completely taken aback by the situation, and she felt deeply indignant. But in the end, she had no choice but to nod. Given all that had happened, she had no choice but to accept the outcome. "Here is a beauty pill. I'll give it to you. Even though it can't change your physique, I believe that it'll still make a huge difference to you," Zhongxian said as he flicked a low-tier god essence pill over. "In exchange, I hope that you can deal with Lin Xie and Wu Yang on my behalf. Within 4 hours, I want the whole city to know that I'm the new city lord, and the rules of the previous city lord will be swiftly enforced." He had gained legitimacy as the city lord for assimilating the city lord monument, but in terms of influence, he was still nowhere close to Ming Laixiang. It would be more effective if he could have her do it on his behalf. "All right then." Ming Laixiang nodded. She knew that it would make no difference to the outcome whether she helped him or not. Given that the young man had obtained the recognition from the previous city lord, there was no one who could shake his position anymore. Since that was the case, she might as well do it on his behalf and get on good terms with him. In fact, her effort would be worth it even if it was just for the beauty pill. After agreeing to Zhongxian's request, Ming Laixiang swallowed the pill right away. She took out a copper mirror after that to look at her own reflection, and her eyes lit up in excitement. It was really as miraculous as the rumors suggested. The effects started showing as soon as she swallowed the pill. Her skin became supplier and smoother, and her facial features became more distinct. Even though her bulky physique remained the same, she emanated a newfound charm that would make others want to take a second look at her. Ming Laixiang did not view herself as a vain person, but it would be a lie to say that she was not concerned about her own appearance. With her standing, there was no need for her to try to intentionally please anyone anymore, but if she had a choice, she would rather be more beautiful and feminine. As such, she was very satisfied with the effects of the beauty pill. With a broad smile on her lips, she took Zhongxian to the City Lord Manor and settled him in before swiftly heading out on an aerial divine beast to settle the task entrusted to her. Her reputation as the strongest contender for the City Lord position was not just for show. In less than 4 hours, almost everyone in Dusklight City knew that a person named Zhongxian would be taking over the position of the City Lord. News swiftly spread, and by the evening, Royal City had already delivered the conferment edict and City Lord token over to acknowledge his position. "It's finally done." Zhongxian heaved a sigh of relief. With this, he would be able to use the teleportation formation within Dusklight City to travel to the Royal City swiftly. "These are the tokens for the 3 provinces of Dusklight City," Qi Linger said as she passed 3 tokens over. She was honestly a little speechless at just how efficient Zhongxian was. She had nearly lost her life competing for her City Lord position. On the other hand, the young man had managed to do it in less than half a day. It sure was maddening just to think about it. Zhongxian passed the 3 tokens to Sun Qiong and his parents and said, "Assimilate these tokens, and you'll be able to use the teleportation formation." After that, he turned to Qi Linger and asked once more, "Little Chick and Zhongjiao are my tamed beast, so it should be alright for them to travel together with me, right?" "That isn't a problem at all," Qi Linger replied with a nod. The City Lord token was designed in a manner that allowed its master to extend its effects to their tamed beasts via the soul contract. After all, it was not uncommon for City Lords to travel together with their tamed beasts. Hearing those words, Zhongxian heaved a sigh of relief. He turned to look at Sun Qiong and his parents once more and said, "If possible, try to assimilate the tokens today. We'll be heading to Royal City tomorrow morning." There were some matters that he needed to attend to as the new City Lord. First and foremost, he needed everyone to learn of their existence, or else they would not be able to earn anima of yearning in their City Lord token and Province Lord tokens. So, he walked out of the City Lord Manor to the square right in front of him. With a leap, he jumped on top of the City Lord monument and sat down on it casually. At this moment, a huge crowd had already gathered around after hearing the news that they had a new City Lord. They were a little curious yet fearful to know who their new City Lord was. After all, this was the man who had the power to determine their fate. You might have heard, but I am the new City Lord of Dusklight City. My name is Zhongxian. I don't intend to change how this city has been functioning so far, but it is my wish to see Dusklight City becoming stronger over time. So, in 4 hours' time, I'll be holding a lecture here to impart my comprehension of cultivation to you. Zhongxian addressed the crowd beneath him with a leisurely but authoritative tone. To be honest, he did not have a concrete idea of just what the anima of yearning was, but based on what he had heard about it so far, he should be able to receive a steady stream of it as long as he could make others have a deep impression of him. The fastest way he knew he could do that was through a lecture. It was similar to how Kong Shi's reputation had become synonymous with his teachings, and it was remembered even after tens of thousands of years on the master-teacher continent. Until the day that his impartations became obsolete and forgotten, his name would continue to be passed down from generation to generation. News that the new City Lord would be holding a public lecture spread like wildfire. Over the next 4 hours, millions of cultivators gathered in the city square and its vicinity. With a satisfied nod, Zhongxian started his lecture. Cultivation lies in the heart, the spirit, and the soul. His voice drifted into the surroundings with the warm breeze of spring, nourishing those taking it in. Everyone was swiftly enraptured by it. Standing amid the crowd was Wu Yang, another ex-contender for the City Lord position. He was still wondering why Ming Laixiang would suddenly submit to a young man in his early 20s and even went to the extent of warning him not to oppose him. However, when he came over personally to hear the public lecture, the significance of those words immediately became apparent to him. It was no wonder that young man was able to become the City Lord. Putting everything aside, his comprehension of cultivation surpassed that of any expert they had seen before. Profound concepts were conveyed in simple, comprehensible terms, leaving countless citizens nodding vehemently as epiphanies struck them. They were able to swiftly understand ideas that had eluded them previously and draw links between seemingly abstract aspects of cultivation. All in all, one thing was for sure. Dusklight City would never be the same again after this lecture. Chapter 2143 Lin Xie 2143 Lin Xie. Due to Lin Xie's superior talent, the Lin clan had risen to the top of the 3 great clans over the past few years. His strength surpassed even that of Lin Xie's mother, the current matriarch, a low-tier celestial god. Their combined prowess made it so that few dared oppose them in Dusklight City. As for the Zhao clan, they were the weakest of the 3 great clans. Be it the potential successor or the current clan head, they came nowhere close in comparison to Lin Xie and his mother. The only reason they were classified as one of the 3 great clans was because of their absolute dominance in the markets of the city, making them the wealthiest family of all. In the Lin clan's manner, Lin Xie, your current strength doesn't pale in comparison to that Ming Laixiang at all. Why do you have to heed her words and give up on the City Lord position? You must know that you aren't alone. You have the entire Lin clan behind you. The clan head of the Lin clan looked at the middle-aged man before him in disappointment. There was no doubt that Lin Xie was one of the most powerful cultivators in Dusklight City. The entire Lin clan was looking forward to the day that Lin Xie took the City Lord position and took the clan to greater heights, but who could have known that a nobody would actually beat him to it? Even if someone took the City Lord position, all they had to do was snatch it away from him. Yet, Lin Xie simply chose to acknowledge him without even putting up a fight. The more he thought about it, the more furious he became. This was the only chance that the Lin clan had to rise to the top of Dusklight City, but Lin Xie was giving up on it just like that. If Ming Laixiang isn't a match for him, I won't be able to defeat him either. Furthermore, he has managed to assimilate the City Lord monument. Instead of humiliating myself, I might as well concede willingly. Lin Xie shook his head and replied calmly. All right, I'll be heading in to cultivate now. Don't bother me if there isn't anything else. After saying those words, Lin Xie turned around to return to his room. At this moment, a butler suddenly rushed over and clasped his fist. Clan head, young master Lin Xie. The new city lord announced that he will hold a public lecture, and it began a moment ago. Quite a few people have gathered around to listen to it. Shall we send our people over to listen in as well? Send our people over to listen in? That fellow just stole our Lin clan's city lord position. He should be grateful that we aren't trying to wreak havoc in the midst of his lecture, let alone join in. Does he really expect our Lin clan to become his students? The clan head waved his hand angrily. The butler could tell that the Dan head was furious, but after a moment of hesitation he still chose to meekly add, according to the reports from those participating in the lecture, it seems like the public lecture is quite beneficial to one's cultivation. There are many cultivators who have been enlightened by his words. Enlightened by his words? TSK, those are nothing more than rumors that fellow is spreading around to bulk up his reputation. I have watched plenty of such charades over the years, the clan head replied impatiently. Enough. Warn the members of the clan that they aren't allowed to listen to the lecture and receive his teachings. Anyone who disobeys the orders will have their names taken out of the clan registry, and they won't be allowed to step through the doors of our manor ever again. I understand. Seeing that the Dan head had already made up his mind, the butler could only hold back his words and leave the room helplessly to relay the orders. Lin Xie, do you see that? That fellow started buying the hearts of the populace as soon as he became the city lord. Once he manages to reinforce his position, the whole of Dusklight City will fall under his control. You mentioned that you want to cultivate, right? Very well. I'll have our 8 elders to use our Lin clan's secret formation to raise your cultivation. By hook or by crook, you have to get the city lord position, the clan head said with gritted teeth. The secret formation? That won't do. It'll cause the 8 elders to sustain significant damage, and even their lifespans will be shortened. Lin Xie was astounded. The Lin clan had a secret formation that channeled the powers of several cultivators into one single person, thus raising that individual's cultivation. As the increment was minor and it caused great damage to those participating in the formation, it had hardly been used before. Lin Xie did not expect the clan head to propose such a thing all of a sudden. There's no need to say any more. As long as you become the city lord, it will all be worth it. There's only one thing you have to do now, and that's to condition your current state and prepare yourself to accept the powers of the 8 elders, the clan head said with a resolute wave of his hand. Soon, the 8 elders of the Lin clan, all low-tier celestial gods, entered Lin Xie's room and swiftly prepared the formation and channeled their energy into Lin Xie's body. All in all, the process took 8 whole hours. Boom. Lin Xie felt refreshed and reinvigorated. He could feel incredible strength surging through his body, and he felt like there was nothing in the world that could stop him. Channeling all this power toward his dantian, his cultivation immediately rose to new heights. Half high-tier celestial god. Even though he did not manage to raise his cultivation all the way to high-tier celestial god, there was no doubt that his fighting prowess was significantly stronger than before. With such strength, the city lord position is already within my grasp. Lin Xie exhaled deeply as an ambitious glint flashed across his eyes. His chances of victory against Ming Laixiang were only 50:50 in the past, but after absorbing the powers of the 8 elders, he was confident that he would be able to overpower the latter easily. The city lord position was his for the taking. Thank you, everyone. Lin Xie bowed deeply in gratitude to the 8 elders were lying on the floor, looking as if they had been sucked dry. In essence, the 8 elders had traded their cultivation in order to raise his cultivation a little. Losing 8 low-tier celestial gods at once was indubitably a huge blow to any power in Dusklight City. No one would make such a choice under normal circumstances. However, the sudden change in the situation forced them to make this desperate move. Once the new city lord built up his base of support and consolidated his power, it would be nigh impossible for them to overthrow him. As long as he became the city lord, he would make sure to compensate the 8 elders who had sacrificed themselves. Say no more. Get that city lord position, and it'll be worth it even if we lose our lives. A snowy bearded elder said weakly. Go. The city lord position can only belong to our Lin clan. Another elder added. Yes. Lin Xie bowed deeply to the elders once more before leaving the room. Just as he was about to head out, the butler from before rushed over to report, Clan Head, Young Master Lin Xie. Unaffiliated cultivator Wu Yang, Clan Head Tian Fei, and Clan Head Zhao Meng have arrived with their juniors. They have come. What are they planning to do? The clan head and Lin Xie traded perplexed glances. It was true that the three great clans had ties with one another, but as they were in a position of rivalry, they were very wary around one another. It was bewildering to see all of them rushing there in the middle of the night. Invite them in, the clan head said. Soon, the crowd were all settled within the main hall. It's a pleasure to see you, Clan Head Lin and Young Master Lin Xie, the crowd greeted. Yes, it's great to see the rest of you as well. I would like to know the reason behind this surprising late-night visit. Clan Head Lin got straight to the point. Clan Head Tian chuckled softly before replying, we came here right after listening to the City Lord's lecture. We noticed that there was no one from the Lin clan around, so we came over to take a look. The City Lord's lecture? Humph. Our Lin clan is the #1 clan of Dusklight City. We are not so desperate as to listen to the lessons of a young brat. Lin Xie immediately blew his top upon hearing those words. You must be joking with me, Clan Head Lin, we have come here out of goodwill. We were concerned that you would be missing out given that none of your members were present for the lecture, so we specially recorded it down in a record crystal so as to share it with you. It's one thing for you to turn us down, but don't you think you are going overboard by insulting our teacher? Clan Head Tian also lost his temper as well. It had only been a short 4-hour lecture, but that was more than enough for him to be completely awed by the young man sitting atop the stone monument. The insights he had gained from the young man were more than enough for him to view the latter as his teacher. Your teacher? Ha ha ha. I know that he's the new city lord, but surely you don't have to grovel before him so quickly. He might just be ousted very soon, making him the shortest-lived city lord in the history of the Sky of Drifting Spectre. Lin Xie sneered. Ousted? You wish to stage a revolt? Clan Head Tian was stunned before bursting into laughter. I see. It's because you've made a breakthrough, that's why you are saying such words. At this moment, Wu Yang, who had been silent all this while, suddenly stepped forward and said, Since Brother Lin has made a breakthrough to half-high-tier celestial god, would you be interested in fighting me? The two of them had been competing for the city lord position for over half a year now, and they had traded blows several times in the past. As such, they were quite familiar with each other's skills. I would gladly accept your challenge. Lin Xie replied with a confident smile. He had been wanting to test his newfound strength after his breakthrough. It would be good if he could make an example out of his previous rival so as to show everyone in Dusklight City that he was no longer the same Lin Xie as before. Who? Lin Xie flitted forward with swift footsteps as he raised his palm to strike Wu Yang. Since he had decided to make an example out of Wu Yang, it would be ideal if he crushed the latter with an overwhelming advantage, so he used his strongest move right from the start, choosing not to hold back at all. Pa. But before Lin Xie could get close to Wu Yang, he suddenly felt a stinging pain on his cheek, and his body spun twice in the air before crashing to the ground. Flabbergasted, he anxiously raised his head to see what had happened, only to see Wu Yang dusting off his palm leisurely after slapping him. You! Lin Xie's eyes reddened with rage as he dashed forward once more. Pa pa pa. 3 consecutive slaps struck Lin Xie's face, causing him to stumble onto the ground. He clasped his swollen cheeks as he looked at Wu Yang in bewilderment. Your strength. No matter how he looked at it, it was clear that Wu Yang was still a middle-tier god. So, how could the latter be so powerful? They had been equally matched before, and he had just achieved a breakthrough. It should not have been possible for him to be so helpless before the other party. Lin Xie, I have always viewed you as a rival, but you aren't worthy of it at all. Wu Yang gazed down at Lin Xie disdainfully from above. Also, if you dare to speak badly about the city lord once more, I'll take your life. With those words, he turned around and left the manor. This Lin Xie was on the verge of going insane. He had thought that he would be unmatched in Dusklight City after his breakthrough, but who could have known that he would only end up being slapped by a longtime rival instead? How did the other party get so powerful all of a sudden? They had just fought one another the day before, and he had not been anywhere close to being that powerful. Since our allegiance differs, it would only be awkward for us to continue associating with one another. Young Master Lin, in view of our past relations, I would just like to leave you with some words of advice before I leave. Don't go against the city lord anymore. You will only be hastening the Lin clan's downfall, clan head Tian said as he rose to his feet. Ha, who do you think you are to speak so arrogantly before me? Seeing how even the low-tier celestial god clan head Tian was making light of him, Lin Xie lost his cool. He immediately got to his feet and hurled a fist toward the other party. He might be no match for Wu Yang, but it would still be a walk in the park for him to deal with a fellow who was so much weaker than him. Pa pa pa. Once again, before Lin Xie's fist could strike, several slaps landed squarely on his cheeks and sent him crashing to the ground. The beating really made Lin Xie go silly. The entire world should be his after his recent breakthrough. Why did he regress to getting pummeled by even a mere low-tier celestial god? Who? Just as Lin Xie was still trying to make sense of the situation, a shadow suddenly loomed above him. Raising his head, he saw clan head Zhao Meng standing right before him with an awful expression on his face. I also can't turn the other way when you have spoken badly about my teacher. Then, without warning, his leg whipped forward to strike Lin Xie's abdomen. Lin Xie immediately attempted to dodge, only to find the trajectory of the kick following him no matter where he went. He could not escape at all. Peng! His body was immediately kicked into the sky and flew over 10 meters. How could this be? Lin Xie did not think that he would also be no match for Zhao Meng, who was supposed to be the weakest of them all. The latter was actually able to kick him flying so easily. He was really going to lose his sanity at this rate. We paid such a huge price to raise my cultivation, but why does it seem like everyone else is progressing faster than me? Am I actually untalented as a cultivator? Chapter 2144 Library of Heaven's Paths Anomaly Tian Fei and Zhao Meng, the two of you are too much. Clan head Lin did not think that the first genius of his clan would actually be trampled by those two, and he immediately lost his temper. Peng peng peng. Just like Lin Xie, after a few firm slaps, clan head Lin was left sitting on the ground with a dazed look on his face. Before, he had been respected as the head of the strongest Lin clan. While he was no match for Lin Xie, he could still deal with the likes of Tian Fei and Zhao Meng with ease. When had they reached a level that was unreachable for him? For some reason, those two seemed to be able to see through his maneuvers. No matter what he tried, those two could defend and retaliate impeccably. Challenge all of the offspring of the Lin clan and leave them on their knees, Tian Fei ordered coldly. After those words were spoken, a crippled young man limped out from behind. Clan head Lin recognized the crippled young man. He was known to be the trash of the Tian clan. After an unfortunate accident that crushed his legs, he had fallen into negativity and eventually become the weakest among his peers. The crippled young man swiftly made his way over to the offspring of the Lin clan, and with a sword in hand, he dominated all of them like a wolf amid a pack of sheep. In less than 10 minutes, dozens of Lin clan offspring were sprawled all over the ground, subdued. Clan head Lin was losing his mind. When did this trash become so powerful as well? Just what in the world was going on with those from the Tian clan? Over the next hour, all the experts of the Lin clan were challenged by the counterparts of the Tian clan and Zhao clan, but all of them ended up suffering tragic defeat. It was as if the world was signaling that it was about time for the Lin clan to retire from the top echelon. After the Tian clan and the Zhao clan left, clan head Lin turned to his butler and bellowed in a fluster, "Quick, go and check. How in the world did all of them suddenly become so formidable?" In a position of rivalry, the three great clans of Dusklight City had often clashed with one another both on the surface and in the shadows. Usually, the Lin clan would be in an advantageous position due to its superior strength, making the other two not dare voice their opposition. But in the span of a few hours, the tables had suddenly turned on them. Clan head Lin could not accept this. Had those two been lying low all this while in order to catch him off guard? Yes. The butler quickly rushed out of the manor, but not long later, he returned with a bruised face. What happened? Are they camping outside the entrance to humiliate us? Clan head Lin asked with gritted teeth. Was there a need for them to be so petty? All they did was complain about the city lord a little. There was no need to go this far, right? No, it's not those two clans. Two beggars provoked me while I was walking down the street. I thought that I could crush them easily with my strength, but even they seemed to have become experts all of a sudden. I ended up getting pummeled by them instead. The butler's eyes were filled with so much indignation that it seemed as if tears were going to be squeezed out from them very soon. Beggars. Clan head Lin was rendered speechless. To think that the esteemed butler of the Lin clan would actually be bullied by beggars. According to word on the street, it seems like everyone became powerful from listening to the lecture of the city lord. This has caused a major growth in the combat sense and cultivation of everyone, the butler said. It's due to the lecture of the city lord? Did you manage to get a recording of the lecture? Lin Xie asked anxiously. I had to go through much difficulty and pay a hefty price in order to obtain a copy, the butler replied as he passed a record crystal over. Lin Xie took the record crystal anxiously and channeled his divine energy into it. The surface of the crystal rippled a little before revealing a young man seated atop a monument. The young man was speaking with a calm but powerful voice. Just by listening to a short segment of it, Lin Xie and clan head Lin fell paralyzed to the ground. It was at this instant that they realized why the Tian clan and the Zhao clan had suddenly become so powerful, such that none of them were their match. It was all because they had listened to the lecture of the new city lord. It's impossible to emulate the effects of the lecture just by listening to the recording, so any learnings we gain from it will be greatly discounted. It seems like our Lin clan has really missed out this time, and this has caused us to lag far behind the others. It's only a matter of time before we are kicked out of the three great clans and fall to the ranks of a second-tier power, clan head Lin said with a bitter look on his face. It was impossible to recreate the enlightenment that those cultivators present at the lecture had received just by looking at the recording. It was the atmosphere of the lecture and the gradual build-up of knowledge that brought about the epiphanies they had received, and they had all missed out on this golden opportunity. With this, the decline of their Lin clan was sealed. If only I'd known that the new city lord was that formidable, I would have listened to Ming Laixiang's words, Lin Xie remarked as tears flowed down his cheeks. It was no wonder even the vicious Ming Laixiang had chosen to come under the new city lord and help him consolidate his power. It was an honor, as well as a once-in-lifetime opportunity, to serve such a capable master. If they had been willing to let go of their pride and listen to the new city lord's lecture, they would still have been the esteemed #1 clan of Dusklight City. It was just a pity that there was no way for them to go back in time and do it all over again. They had sapped the cultivation of their 8 elders, only to fall in defeat at the hands of Tian Fei and the others. Once news spread, Lin Xie, as well as the entire Lin clan, would become the greatest laughingstock of Dusklight City. Oblivious to the major changes that had happened in Dusklight City as a result of Zhongxian's lecture, Qi Linger looked at the dizzy group before her and explained, "This is the heart of the sky of Drifting Spectre Royal City." The group was currently standing atop a massive circular teleportation formation. They had just teleported over to Royal City, and the spatial turbulence around them had yet to calm down sufficiently for them to regain the previous night. In the 4 hours that Zhongxian had lectured, many low-tier gods had become middle-tier gods, and many middle-tier gods had become high-tier gods. Overnight, the overall prowess of Dusklight City had grown more than it had in the past 30 years. This caused a temporary vacuum of spiritual energy to appear above the city. Be it humans, divine beasts, or even artifacts, those who had listened to Zhongxian's lecture were deeply inspired by his words, and they had grown in one way or another. As a result, his reputation had soared right to the top, earning him a loyal following. Of course, none of this meant much to Zhongxian. Such things had happened so many times that he did not even pay much heed to it anymore. As the spatial turbulence finally faded, the group left the teleportation formation and looked toward Royal City. At a glance, it was clear that Royal City was many times larger than Dusklight City, and the buildings around were much grander and more exquisite. Naturally, the streets were crowded as well, but not to the extent of being as packed as Dusklight City. The streets were generally clean, and the positioning of the buildings made sense as well. This hinted that the city had been governed well. Looking toward the sky, there were all sorts of divine beasts flying around. However, what was even more mystifying were the massive mountains shrouded amid clouds floating in the air. It was as if one had stepped away from reality and into a fantasy world. Those who are able to reside on the divine mountains above Royal City are mainly those from major clans and powers. Almost all these clans and powers are headed by high-tier celestial gods and above, Qi Linga explained. High-tier celestial gods. As expected of Royal City, it's indeed a frightening place, Zhongjia muttered to itself. Even while it was still a high-tier god, it was able to do as it pleased in Twilight City, disregarding even the city lord. But Royal City was simply filled with so many experts that it would have to lie low if it wanted to survive. Putting everything aside, just by scanning its surroundings, it was already able to find 5 divine beasts that were more powerful than it. It immediately reigned in its bulging pride and quieted down. This was kind of similar to a nouveau riche walking into high society for the very first time. Only upon seeing how rich the rich truly were would one realize that one was nothing special at all. What's there to fear? Brother Sun is here with you. It's only a matter of time before we conquer drifting spectre Royal City together, Sun Qiong said with a confident smile as he hooked his arm around Zhongjia's neck. Those words made Zhong Xian's eyebrows twitch a little. Every time Sun Qiong said those words, he would have a premonition that trouble was trailing not too far away from him. Zhongjia coldly pushed Sun Qiong's arm away from him before turning to the small little chick sitting atop Zhong Xian's shoulder and smiling fawningly. Boss, is there anything I can do for you? Without even looking at it, little chick replied nonchalantly, I want to die. Do you want to die with me? Zhong Xian covered his face from sheer embarrassment. Just what mess of a group did he land himself in? With a deep sigh, he decided to ignore this bunch of eccentrics and turned to Qi Linga instead. Let's find a place to stay. Do you have any suggestions? He would not mind living in a shabby place if he was all alone, but with his parents coming around with him, he was determined to at least find a decent place so that they could have a good rest. Even though the teleportation formation was nearly instantaneous and his parents were protected by the province lord tokens, the Xingmeng Sword Saints still inevitably sustained some damage due to their low cultivation realm. I spent most of my younger years living in the Qi clan's manor, and I left Royal City as soon as I came of age, Qi Linga replied awkwardly. Since that's the case, let's just find any suitable place, Zhong Xian replied. Even though Qi Linga came from one of the major clans in Royal City, her standing was not high enough to allow her to bring an outsider back with her. Furthermore, most major clans were bound to have many rules, and that would be very stifling to them. It would be much more comfortable and convenient for them to find their own place. As travelers frequently dropped by Royal City, it was quite easy for them to secure accommodation. In less than 2 hours, they were able to find a satisfactory residence. The only issue was that the price was much higher than the one they had lived in back at Twilight City. Fortunately, the cost was still within Zhong Xian's spending power. Here are 50 beauty pills. I need you to help me sell them one way or another. At the same time, I hope that you can help me look into all news regarding the spirit god, Zhong Xian said as he passed several bottles of god essence pills over. Along the way, he used the money that he had earned previously to buy more low-tier god essence pills. To him, the beauty pill was as good as free money. All he needed was a surge of his zhenqi. All right, Qi Linga replied as she left the courtyard. Following which, Zhong Xian turned to Sun Qiong and sent a telepathic message to him. I need you to investigate the current political situation in Royal City. While you're on it, I want you to look into Lu Chong as well. He was taken away by demon monarch Chen Kuan, so he should be somewhere in the city at the moment. Shortly after Lu Chong's breakthrough on the Celestial Mountain, he had been taken away by demon monarch Chen Kuan of the Sky of Drifting Spectre. Given so, he should be in Royal City at the moment. I understand. Sun Qiong nodded before leaving the residence. After they left, Zhongxian helped to settle his parents in their rooms before returning to his room. He sat down on the chair, took out the crimson pendant hanging around his neck, and fondled it quietly. Where are you, Ruoxin? What is your identity in the firmament? Through his interaction with Luo Ruoxin, he could tell that her standing should be rather high in the firmament. Otherwise, she would not have been so prudent around him. Perhaps I could try to figure something out from this droplet of blood, Zhongxian thought as he looked at the crimson fluid flowing within the pendant. The pendant had been given to him by Luo Ruoxin. He was not sure if the blood inside was really hers, but even if it was not, it was likely a vital clue that would lead him to her. Let me give it a try. In the past, he had been unable to channel the powers in the blood due to his lacking strength. However, with his physical body, soul, and zhenqi cultivation reaching high-tier god, he should finally be able to do it. He quickly set up a formation within his room before finally floating the pendant at the very center. Then, he began to channel his consciousness into the pendant. The exterior of the pendant seemed to be made of some sort of incredibly resilient crystal, such that he could not break it even with his current strength. Fortunately, his consciousness was still able to seep through it, albeit with some difficulty. It did not take long for his consciousness to finally arrive before the droplet of blood. The droplet of blood sat quietly within the pendant, not revealing the slightest hint of power. If not for all the times it had saved Zhongxian in the past, he might have been duped by its seemingly ordinary appearance. Determined to get to the bottom of this, he pushed consciousness toward the droplet of blood. Boom! As soon as his consciousness came into contact with it, his body jolted in astonishment. A familiar aura shrouded his body, and the words that he had heard shortly after his transcension to the master-teacher continent sounded in his mind. The callous heavens regard all beings as nothing more than straw dogs. The sun sets, and the moon wanes. The heavens are imperfect. The arrogant heavens dictate the rules of the world, enforcing order upon all beings. Impartially, the heavens assess all beings on the path to enlightenment. Boom! As those voices sounded in Zhongxian's head, the library of heaven's path in his head suddenly jolted. The world spun around him before everything went dark. Pang! He collapsed from the chair he was sitting on and fainted. Straw dogs are basically dogs made out of straw, and they serve as ceremonial objects in ancient China. A meaningful quote from Wikipedia regarding the topic from Su Zhe. The heavens are not partial. They do not kill living things out of cruelty or give them birth out of kindness. We do the same when we make straw dogs to use in sacrifices. We dress them up and put them on the altar, but not because we love them. And when the ceremony is over, we throw them into the street, but not because we hate them. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories,